Chapter 1161. You! Qingyaojin, how dare you? How dare you? How dare you act so presumptuously in the imperial court? The crowd roared angrily. Li Shimin coughed when he saw that the situation was getting out of his control. Wei Zheng said coldly, "What do you want to do in the imperial court? This old man thinks that the market is suitable for you. Why don't I ask your majesty to go to the market today?" Hearing Wei Zheng's words, all of the officials fell silent. Only then did they notice Li Shimin's gloomy face. "If you don't have enough, I'll give you 3 days and 3 nights to quarrel outside the hall. I'll take care of your meals. How about it?" Li Shimin looked around indifferently and said, "I allowed the crown prince to do this. I'm curious. Beloved Minister Wang, since you've brought this matter up, I'd like to ask, how many of you think the crown prince did something inappropriate?" Regarding this matter, the group of civil officials looked at each other. No one dared to say anything. What was there to say now? The emperor had given his permission. What else could they say? But Wang Qinggong was different. He was the first to jump out. Hearing the emperor's words, although he was trembling all over, he still gritted his teeth and said, "Your Majesty, this old subject indeed lacked consideration at this time. However, Your Majesty, you have to uphold justice for this old subject regarding what General Cheng said just now. Such a boor shouldn't cause a ruckus in this court. If this spreads out, what will the world think of the Tang dynasty? Your Majesty, Qing Yaojin really didn't think it through. This is the imperial court. How can we allow him to make a fool of himself again and again? Such a boor should stay in the military camp forever." Cheng Yaojin smiled coldly and did not say anything. He just clenched his fists until they made cracking sounds. Wei Zheng couldn't help but frown. "Official Wang, quit while you're ahead. The emperor will make a decision on this matter. Do you want to overstep your authority?" Wang Qinggong was shocked. He glanced at Li Shimin, who was staring at him playfully, and felt a chill on his back. "Beloved official Wang, do you mean that we should remove beloved official Cheng from his position on the spot? Or do you want me to kill him? Then do you think that if I were to remove Minister Cheng from his post and have you guard the Longyu Road, do you think you would do better than him?" Wang Qinggong's expression changed instantly. He hurriedly prostrated himself on the ground. "I don't mean that, Your Majesty. Then tell me, what do you want? Do you think the Crown Prince and I did something illegal on Shao Mountain?" Li Shimin's anger. One of the Buddha's sleeves said, "Back then when there was a locust plague in Chang, and I asked all of you, do you have a solution? When there was a food shortage, I still asked you all to donate some food in the political announcement hall. What did you all do? If official Cheng and the Crown Prince didn't find a genius among the people, if he didn't come up with a way to set up an academy on Shao Mountain to take in the refugees, if he didn't take out all his savings to buy 20,000 don of food, I ask you, do you still have a peaceful life today? At that time, don't you think the royal family of the Tang dynasty is a disgrace?" Li Shimin asked. Indeed, all the civil officials couldn't help but lower their heads. They knew clearly in their hearts. "Your Majesty, we didn't think about this matter at that time, but we really don't have any money left." Wang Qinggong was still making a final struggle. However, Li Shimin had no desire to continue this matter. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Don't mention this matter again. If there's nothing else, the court is dismissed." At this moment, the imperial physician of the Imperial Institute of Medicine hurriedly came out and said, "Your Majesty, I have a report to report." "Your Majesty, do you still remember that General Nyo's son, Captain Nyo, broke his leg a few days ago?" Li Shimin nodded. "Didn't I ask the Imperial Institute of Medicine to go to the military camp for help? How is it? Is that boy okay now?" At this time, everyone knew the ins and outs of the matter. But now the emperor was pretending to be confused, so they didn't dare to say anything. Imperial physician Zhou glanced at Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin and said, "Your Majesty, please forgive me for my incompetence." But Imperial physician Zhou pointed at Qing Yaojin and said, "That day, I led a group of people from the Imperial Institute of Medicine to the military camp under Your Majesty's order, but halfway there, I was stopped by Qing Yaojin. Moreover, I heard that Zhang Feng, the Chancellor of White Deer College, who won the mid-autumn hunt, personally diagnosed him and came up with a blood-for-life treatment. I wanted to go to White Deer College to take a look. After all, Captain Niu and General Niu Jinda are the gods of war who protect our Tang dynasty. However, when this old subject and the others reached the mountain gate, we were stopped by a group of old soldiers, who used to be Yu Qigong's subordinates. They said that without a letter from Zhang Feng, no one was allowed to enter the mountain. Your Majesty, I have practiced medicine for dozens of years. When have I heard of such a treatment method? It's simply witchcraft. Li Shimin pretended to be surprised as he looked at Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong and asked, "My two beloved subjects, is this true?" Yu Qigong heard and said, "Your Majesty, this is indeed true." Hearing this, all the officials couldn't help but exclaim again. Oh my God! Old man thought that the blood for life treatment method was just a rumor. Now it seems like, oh my God, witchcraft. This is definitely witchcraft. Seeing Li Shimin's expression turn cold again, little Gizi hurriedly flung his fly whisk and said, "Silence." That Wang Qinggong wanted to say something. He definitely wanted to say something. Moreover, they had already prepared for today's matter, from everything on Mount E to this witchcraft. They could definitely pull down Cheng Yaojin and the other old bastards, but now it seemed to be impossible. After all, the pain from before had cleared up his muddle-headed mind. The emperor seemed to be aware of all of this. Otherwise, how could these people dare to cause trouble under the emperor's nose? The more Wang Qinggong thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. Originally, he had been doing well in the Supreme Court. Usually, he would drink wine, take a walk with his birds, and when he had nothing to do, he would play with his concubines. His life had been quite peaceful. However, 3 days ago, he suddenly received a letter from the family head that he had not contacted for more than 10 years. Meanwhile, it was also at that time that he learned that most of these civil officials had received new reports from their families. These people were all like him. They were also relatives of the Wang clan, or branch families, and even people from the other 7 prominent families of the 5 families. Originally, they thought that this time, the Guanlong people and the Shandong landowning households would act with them. However, just now, he found that the Guanlong scum had actually slipped away. What did this mean? It meant that the rumor that they had been bribed by Zhang Feng was true. Although there were people in their families who were thinking about how to cooperate with Zhang Feng, these people didn't want to do anything. At the very least, they wanted to control Zhang Feng in their own hands. At this time, the 7 major families were in a mess. The family that had nothing to do with them had given them an order to put pressure on the emperor in court. This would help them ease the tension in their negotiations with Zhang Feng. They didn't care for things like braised meat. However, they had to get their hands on Zhang Feng's new diet formula. At this time, Wang Qinggong faintly felt that this matter wasn't so simple. However, he only had a vague feeling. After a short period of silence, Li Shimin knocked on the armrest of the dragon throne and slowly said, "We have heard of this matter. Although we do not believe in such things, we believe that there will be a day when the truth will come to light." "That's right, Minister Yuqi, tell us what happened afterwards." "We found out that you were in White Deer College these 2 days. Also, we heard that Lu Hongwen and Ouyang Kai seem to have gone to Shao Mountain and witnessed the process of Zhang Feng's medical practice with their own eyes." Yu Qigong had been wondering why the emperor would do this for Hu Xuanming, but now he seemed to have understood something. He hurriedly said, "In reply to your Majesty, this is indeed the case. However, this old official doesn't dare to say it now in case some people think that this old official is being unreasonable. It's better to let Lord Lu and Lord Ouyang speak. After all, they were the ones who entered the classroom and personally watched Zhang Feng's surgery." At this time, Li Shimin was also interested. Although he didn't go, he also wanted to know what was so special about it. When the two heard this, they had no choice but to stand up. They clearly explained the ins and outs of the matter. At this time, there were fewer and fewer people in the imperial court who questioned them. After all, the two people's identities were clear. The two even mentioned what Zhang Feng said about medical science and that the blood test wasn't accurate. It was a blood type matching and so on. This shocked everyone in the imperial hospital and made them angry. In the end, Li Shimin waved his hand and let the people from the imperial hospital personally bring the blood test to the political announcement hall and personally test it. This test was really amazing. Many people, who usually use this as the standard for blood identification, began to doubt their lives. At this time, Li Shimin also said with incomparable shock, "Imperial Dr. Zhou, what do you think of this? Could it be that what you did just now was also witchcraft? Or do you think that Lu Hongwen and Ouyang Kai are also in Zhang Feng's group?" At this time, everyone in the Imperial Hospital felt guilty. Lu Hongwen and Ouyang Kai were the two people who jumped the most fiercely before. They were determined to get this guy into trouble. However, since the end of the mid-autumn hunt, not only did they not take action, but they also got great benefits from Zhang Feng. This made people a little confused about what these two families and the Guanlong 8 clans were thinking. Imperial Dr. Zhou hurriedly said, answering back the emperor, "This old minister heard it clearly just now. This thing was personally operated by Divine Doctor's son Simiao. That kid seems to be just..." It seems that this old minister is very convinced that this so-called operation was made by Divine Dr. Sunday. After all, I heard that Divine Doctor's son went up the mountain to improve his medical skills. Ha! Li Shimin sneered twice. This laugh scared Imperial Dr. Zhou to the point of choking. Imperial Dr. Zhou really didn't believe that this magical thing was made by Zhang Feng. After all, even if he started learning medicine in his mother's womb, even if he was a medical genius, it was impossible for him to make this thing in a short period of time. He was more willing to believe that this thing was made by Dr. Sunday. However, he also knew that this seemed to be a little impossible. After all, he had never heard of such a rumor about Dr. Sun before. At this time, Imperial Dr. Zhou didn't know what was going on. All of this happened in an instant. Imperial Dr. Zhou hurriedly knelt and said, "Your Majesty, I was confused for a moment, but I did it for General Niu. Please have mercy, Your Majesty." Li Shimin took a deep look at Wang Qinggong again and said, "I have heard about this matter." General Niu didn't say anything. "What are you talking about here? This is a family matter. You can ask General Niu personally when he returns." "Alright, this matter is like this. Don't mention this matter again. What do you think, Lord Wang?" Wang Qinggong was already drenched in cold sweat. How could he dare to say anything? Seeing that no one spoke, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Actually, this White Deer College's Zhang Feng has indeed disappointed me. Such a good thing is only used in such a small area. However, I feel that this brat did better than all of you combined. If only one of you could do what this brat did, I would be able to sleep soundly every day." When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but be shocked. They didn't know what was wrong with the emperor. At this time, he was actually talking about Zhang Feng. Involuntarily, the civil officials calmed down. However, they didn't dare to speak carelessly. They only pricked up their ears to hear how the emperor was going to punish Zhang Feng. Chapter 1162. As for Lu Hongwen and Ouyang Kai, their faces couldn't help but turn pale. However, they were secretly delighted. At this moment, the emperor showed dissatisfaction towards Zhang Feng. That meant that the rumors about this kid and the emperor weren't true. Could it be that the rumors about the emperor and this kid being extremely close and hiding their identities were false? Everyone in the hall couldn't help but start to make small calculations. Cheng Yaojin and the others couldn't help but be a little surprised at this time. If it wasn't for Xiao Gizi informing them in advance yesterday, they would have definitely thought that the emperor had taken the wrong medicine. But now it seemed that the emperor didn't take the medicine, and was very good. Ayaya, this kid is really something. Your Majesty, why don't this old official go to Barren Mountain tomorrow and teach him a lesson for you to vent your anger? This is such a good thing. Look at that braised meat. Even Your Majesty hasn't eaten it yet. What is this? He doesn't respect you, ah. This kind of person needs to be taught a lesson. Cheng Yaojin loudly reprimanded Zhang Feng, angering him. In any case, he was saying it for these people to hear. As long as he saw that kid, it would be fine. Thinking of this, Zhang Sunwuji also became angry. Yu Qigong even more so. Wei Jing also couldn't help but say a few words about Zhang Feng. The generals couldn't help but stare blankly at this scene. That's not it. What kind of situation is this? Isn't this kid a close friend of a few big shots in the military? At this time, They couldn't understand the situation and could only stare at the few people arguing. As for the civil officials, seeing that they were arguing fiercely, they also bitterly listed Zhang Feng's faults. However, how could they be a match for Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong? These two were people who could anger an enemy general to death on the battlefield without spitting a single curse word. They were existences who could kill enemies with a wave of their sword. How could they not win against these civil officials? When they heard that these people dared to scold Zhang Feng, they were embarrassed. They would only stop when that person's face turned white and his eyes turned white. As for Li Shimin, he pretended not to hear and quietly walked away. After Li Shimin left, the court became even more chaotic. It wasn't until 2 hours later that Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin finally left the political announcement hall with their arms around each other's shoulders, laughing heartily as if they were extremely carefree. As for Wei Zheng and the others, their faces were filled with shamelessness. There was no need to mention the group of civil officials behind them. For them to be able to stand up at this time was already a blessing from their ancestors. This was the first time that they realized that when these two idiots, Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong, they could take someone's life. As soon as they left the Vermilion Bird Bridge, Wei Zheng and the others, as well as Qing Yaojin, stood on the bridge with smiles on their faces as they watched the crowd leave. Only Lu Hongwen, Ouyang Kai, and the 3 ministers from the Ministry of Works and Rights were left behind. "Gentlemen, let's find a place to have a drink?" Qing Yaojin's knuckles cracked as he looked at them and said, how could they not go at this time? They didn't want to experience the tragedy that Wang Chunggong and the others had just experienced. Moreover, the people here were all dukes and first-rank officials. How could they not go? They could only smile bitterly and cup their hands. They followed the palanquins, carriages, and horses into the nearest Chang and hotel. The arrival of the ministers naturally made the manager of the Chang and hotel grin from ear to ear. Although it could be said that this was a free meal, what was this? This was a shop front, a golden signboard. A few dukes, as well as the chancellor of the Imperial College's Hongwenguan, and the others had come to visit. This would be a great deal of face if word got out. Moreover, the people in the Chang and hotel all knew that these people were the ones behind the scenes. After sitting down in a luxurious private room on the 2nd floor of the hotel, Zhang Su and Wu Ji blocked Qing Yaojin and said with a smile, "Gentlemen, we are all old acquaintances. Let's not talk too much. Today, I invited you here to discuss something. However, there is still a distinguished guest, so please wait for a while." "Lord Zhangsun, you are really making us wait. How can we?" Before He Zhongjing could finish speaking, Yu Qigong said coldly, "I told you to sit down, so you better sit down properly." This time, He Zhongjing and the others were well behaved. They couldn't guess what these people wanted to do. At this time, they could only sit in a daze, uncomfortable as if they were sitting on pins and needles. However, they didn't dare to speak carelessly. After all, they were all sitting here. Although they didn't know why they were called here, they were usually very clear with each other. The reason they were called here was naturally because of Zhang Feng's matter. After all, they were smart people and naturally knew that some things that Zhang Feng couldn't handle were handled by them. However, although they weren't really enemies before, their relationship was naturally not good. Even during the mid-autumn hunt, they had the intention of making things difficult for this kid. Naturally, they felt a little guilty at this time. However, on second thought, they had already established a cooperative relationship with Zhang Feng. They were grasshoppers on the same rope as these dukes. What were they afraid of? Just as Lu Hongwen and the others were thinking about this, the door of the private room was suddenly pushed open again. Li Xiaogong slowly walked in. He Zhongjing and the others hurriedly jumped up and stood up instinctively. Li Xiaogong glanced at them and then looked at Wei Zheng. Then he waved his hand lightly. "Sit down. There's no need to be formal here. What we are talking about today is not a matter of the imperial court." Hearing this, He Zhongjing and the others sat down in surprise. After they sat down, Wei Zheng cupped his hands and said, "Since everyone is here, Your Highness, do you want to speak? Or it's better for you to do it. After all, old man doesn't know about your business relationship. I'm only here today as a witness." Li Xiaogong said as he drank his tea. Hearing this, He Zhongjing couldn't help but feel that it was as expected. It was really because of this matter. At this time, Wei Jing said slowly, "You've seen in the morning court today. The 7 distinguished families are covetously eyeing our business with Zhang Feng. Now that we're all cooperating with Zhang Feng, I know what you think. Just like what you said to Zhang Feng, we're all standing on the same line of interests, so we're friends. Since that's the case, you should understand why I called you here today, right?" How could he Zhongjing and the others not understand? He wanted them to express their stance. At this time, the Guanlong forces were finally ignored by the emperor. Although they weren't afraid of the emperor, once they really made a scene, both sides would suffer losses. Moreover, the 5 families and 7 great clans were eyeing them covetously. At this time, they didn't dare to act rashly. In addition, the people in the clans also knew about Zhang Feng. It was impossible for them to fall out with Zhang Feng at this time. In the face of absolute interests, they couldn't be casually abandoned by the clans. This was the cruelty of the big clans. In other words, at this time, even if they knew that the 5 families and 7 great clans were going to make trouble, they still had to stand with Zhang Feng. Seeing that they didn't speak. At this time, Wei Jing said in an incomparably dignified voice, "This morning, Old Man got the news that the iron sheet ship designed by Zhang Feng has been built in the Chang'an shipyard. However, the Chang'an shipyard again sent news that the 5 families and 7 great clans have suspended the sale of iron ore or raw iron." Chapter 1163. The few of them were puzzled. Why didn't the emperor mention this matter this morning? Why did he call them over to discuss such an important matter in private? Could this matter be related to their clans? Zhong Zheng and the others couldn't help but be even more afraid to speak. Seeing this, Wei Zheng sighed and said, "Actually, Old Man hasn't reported this matter to the emperor yet. The main thing is to ask all of you after court if this matter has anything to do with you. Or rather, have you heard of this matter?" Wei Zheng's words were very clear. He meant to ask them if they knew about this matter or if it had anything to do with their clans. His meaning was very clear. At this moment, the people sitting here basically represented the imperial family and those related to Zhang Feng. They just wanted to inform each other. If they didn't inform each other in advance, they would also be implicated if something happened. Although the emperor was verbally reprimanding Zhang Feng, who knew if this was part of the emperor's scheme? Although this was all speculation, but this matter now, Zhong Zheng and the others exchanged glances and saw that Wei Zheng and the others were also staring at them. They couldn't help but laugh bitterly and say, "Prime Minister Wei, we did have some misunderstandings with Brother Zhang Feng. But just like what Brother Zhang Feng said, there are no absolute enemies, only absolute benefits. This time, our clans and Brother Zhang Feng have some business connections. If we take drastic measures at this time, wouldn't we be cutting off our own source of income? So, Prime Minister Wei, this matter has nothing to do with us." Hearing this, Wei Zheng and the others heaved a deep sigh of relief. If the 5 families and 7 great families had acted together with Guanlong's people, this matter would really be troublesome. Now, it seemed that there was still a chance. Since that's the case, then it's fine. All of you are aware of the White Deer Academy situation. Therefore, this old man wants to say that we're all bound together for good or ill. Old Wei, we're here to eat. Why do you sound so serious? Cheng Yaojin was also a quick-witted person. Seeing that the matter was settled, he slapped the table and said, Come. Let's eat. We can be considered one of us now. As long as we know that this matter wasn't caused by you guys, it's fine." After 3 rounds of drinks, Li Xiaogong said faintly, "Zhang Feng is a good kid. Although the old man hasn't been to the mountain, the old man is also prepared to live in the mountain for a period of time when he is free. Since Zhang Feng has taken out such sincerity to make friends with you, if the old man finds out that you have done such a treacherous thing, the old man will have something to use against you." Hearing this, He Zhongjing and the others' expressions changed. He hurriedly stood up and said, "Your Highness, what are you saying? Why would we cut off our own ties?" Your Highness, you worry too much." Li Xiaogong didn't say anything but still got up, clasped his fists, and slowly walked away. This time, the investigation had been made clear. As for Wei Zheng's so-called matter, in fact, the emperor had already known it. At this time, the purpose of his visit was actually to find out the background of these people. After all, in the court today, he didn't see these people express their opinions, so the emperor couldn't figure out the situation. As soon as Li Xiaogong left Chang and hotel, he hurried back to the imperial palace. Li Shimin had been waiting in the imperial study for a long time. As soon as he saw Li Xiaogong come in, he hurriedly asked, "How is it? The people of Guanlong are not involved, are they?" Li Xiaogong shook his head and said, "Replying to your majesty, according to this old minister's observation, the people of Guanlong shouldn't be involved in this matter. However, in the end, these people are also people who only care about profit. That brat Zhang Feng has already taken out such a tempting thing. How could they possibly know about this? Your Majesty, you're worrying too much." "Worry too much?" Li Shimin shook his head. The matter of iron ore was not only owned by the Wang clan of the 5 surnames and 7 clans. The people of Guanlong occupied most of the northern region. If Li Shimin believed that the people of Guanlong didn't have iron or veins, then he, Li Shimin, was really a fool. However, after hearing Li Xiaogong's words, Li Shimin really breathed a sigh of relief. The Mitsubishi bayonet that he was proud of would not last long because of the lack of iron, and this shipyard. Although he said that he wanted to get rid of Guanlong and the 5 surnames and 7 clans in one fell swoop, he really didn't dare to do so at this time. Just dealing with one of them was likely to cause a great disturbance to the economy of the Tang dynasty, let alone dealing with 2 of them. It was simply courting death, unless he had a suitable excuse. But what could he do? But this time, the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans had finally taken action. Then he might as well make this matter worse. Only in this way would he have a reason to take action. Thinking of this, Li Shimin said slowly, "Imperial uncle, this time I have to trouble you to come out of the mountain." Chapter 1164. 2 hours later. The gate of the Chang and shipyard, which had always been mysterious and forbidden from approaching, slowly opened. The Chang and shipyard was located in the Longsho Canal between the Daming Palace and Jiaqing. It went up to the Longsho Mountain and down to the Wei River. At this moment, the sound of firecrackers shook the sky. All the people were shocked to discover a big thing. The Chang and shipyard, which had been closed for several months, was actually open. After a moment of silence, everyone rushed towards the direction of the Chang and shipyard. They wanted to see what would happen in the Chang and shipyard today. After all, such a thing had never happened before. However, before the crowd could get close, they saw a black thing, which seemed to be a lump of iron, slowly sailing toward the outside of the shipyard with the wind. "Oh my God! This is a ship, an iron ship." Following a blacksmith's exclamation, everyone then realized that the pitch-black thing was actually covered with a layer of unknown thickness of iron. This time, it was incredible. Everyone was in an uproar. It was not that they had not seen the ships of the Tang dynasty as well as the ships before, but this lump of iron really surprised them. Some of the bolder people couldn't help but head towards the shipyard frantically. This time, the troops stationed at the shipyard didn't chase them away like they usually did. This time, everyone became even bolder. In fact, some merchants even abandoned their own stalls and followed the crowd to watch the show. This time, it was really lively. The ship slowly sailed from the East Longsho Canal to Tungweimen, and then to Chunming Gate, which was near the East Market. At this time, the crowd of onlookers increased. Firecrackers were set off one after another on the ship as if they were free. The red cloth on the metal ship was also covered with layer after layer. At this time, as the sound of the firecrackers spread farther and farther in the north wind, more than half of the people in Chang and city could hear the deafening sound. More and more people gathered, to the point that there was already a dense crowd outside the Spring Bright Gate. Everyone was either at the city gate or outside the city gate, staring intently at the big ship in the river. Even the eyes of the city guards stationed on the city walls were about to pop out. At this moment, the iron ship slowly came to a stop in the Dragonhead Canal of the Spring Bright Gate. As the iron ship slowly came to a stop, a huge wave suddenly appeared on the originally calm water surface, smashing towards the onlookers. Along with a burst of exclamations. Only then did everyone recover from their shock. Seeing no movement from the ship, everyone gathered their courage and stepped forward to take a closer look. The Dragon Head Canal was originally used as a moat, and the river was at least 10 feet wide. However, at this time, it could only fit one iron ship. Moreover, as the iron ship slowly approached the shore, the water level had already increased by a large amount. The commoners also followed the boat to the shore. When they saw that the people on the boat did not move, they slowly went forward. With this look, the crowd could not help but burst into another burst of exclamations. The entire body of the ship was covered with thick pieces of iron, which were at least 10 feet in size, riveted to the body of the ship with rivets. Moreover, in the gaps, no one knew what was stuffed. At this moment, everyone looked up and could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. The entire ship is made of iron? Oh my God, how much iron will be wasted? Is this going to start a war? Along with the doubts, a burst of horse hooves sounded behind the crowd. The crowd did not think much and hurriedly stepped forward, hurriedly opening a path. A group of officials from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Personnel hurriedly appeared at the Spring Bright Gate. At this time, the crowd did not even sit in sedan chairs, but instead rode on horses. As the crowd approached, the crowd could not help but open their mouths wide. Looking at the lump of iron in front of them, all the officials could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. On the ship, the Chang and Navy Commander Zhang Liang's armor was polished until it shone brightly. He even got a red cloak tied around his neck. As the north wind blew, it was very beautiful. Lord I have been ordered to supervise the construction of the iron ship. Today, I am here to report the completion of my task. Please come up and inspect it. At this time, Zhang Liang's voice was also louder. It was as if he wanted everyone present to hear about his great achievements. And this voice was really effective. Once again, it won waves of exclamations from the crowd. Di Zhongjing and the others could not wait any longer. After exchanging pleasantries with Zhang Liang, they hurriedly boarded the iron ship. Once they boarded the iron ship, He Zhongjing and the others felt shocked. The entire ship was almost made of iron. Even the 3 incomparably huge masts on the ship, he dared to say that they were 100% pure iron. He Zhongjing had indeed heard that the people in this shipyard were building a new type of ship. Every month, they would directly transport iron ore from the Ministry of Works. The shipyard even had the authority to directly purchase iron ore from the outside. With such a huge number, they made this? Chapter 1165. Things were still fermenting. Chang'an was not big, but if Fandong City made a fart, people in Shi City would know in less than 2 hours. What was more, the shipyard made this iron lump in such a high-profile way today. What was it going to do? No one knew. But it just added a topic for people to talk about after dinner. It was rumored that this thing was designed by the dean of White Deer College. Once this thing appeared, it meant that the waterway trade of the Tang dynasty had officially entered the golden period of navigation. For those businessmen, this was a heaven-sent opportunity. They only needed to build a business transit area at Huku Waterfall. Then, they could set off from Chang and to go to Jiangnan, Jinla, or other countries. It was at least twice as fast as traveling by land. This made those businessmen even more excited. Once the iron ship appeared, although they certainly could not afford it, it meant that the national strength of the Tang dynasty had skyrocketed again. In this way, who dared to compete with the navy of the Tang dynasty on the waterway? Not to mention the small boats of other countries, even the current five-tooth warships seemed to be unable to withstand the collision of this ship. Although the whole ship was still designed according to the model of the five-tooth warship, the sturdiness of the bow of the hull was more prominent. The collision spike in front of the ship was 20 feet long, and it was protruding from the bow of the ship, like an axe or a sharp sword out of the sheath. Not to mention colliding with it, just looking at it would make people shudder. The bow and the stern of the ship were shaped like an axe, just like a charging boat. However, this greatly increased the wind resistance of the ship. Of course, these people did not know about the wind resistance. Even Zhang Liang and Li Shimin had only seen it according to the explanation in Zhang Feng's blueprint. Li Shimin naturally came. At this time, Su Zi, surrounded by a group of eunuchs and ministers, slowly boarded the iron ship. Looking at the completely new design inside and outside the ship, he could not help but click his tongue in amazement. His bright back straightened even more. "Your Majesty, take a look. This is the crew's warehouse. It's 150 m long. Its draft has long surpassed that of the previous five-tooth battleships. What's more, the crew's warehouse is at the bottom of the ship. Each ship is equipped with 15 crew's warehouses. Each crew's warehouse is equipped with over 100 oars and lookouts. That's..." Zhang Liang had never thought that one day he would be able to bring the emperor to this ship and tell him all kinds of stories on the ship. After the final introduction, they entered the command cabin and the rest cabin of the ship, which was also known as the crew's canteen. On the side of the cafeteria, Li Shimin couldn't help but ask in confusion, "There seems to be a place between these two places. You didn't tell me about it, right?" Hearing this, Zhang Liang couldn't help but be speechless. "Your Majesty, this is also the place this general wanted to talk about. This iron ship, everything can be understood. It was built according to Prince Zhang's blueprint. However, there is a place this general does not know what it is used for." As he spoke, Zhang Liang found a large door between the resting cabin and the lower level. He opened the door and saw an enormous, oval-shaped space that was completely empty. It was connected from the top of the ship to the lowest level of the ship's draft cabin. Standing here, one could even hear the gurgling sounds of the Wei River flowing cheerfully. Not only was Li Shimin confused, but Wei Zheng and the others who followed Li Shimin were also confused. They didn't know what Zhang Feng had left behind this place for. Li Shimin turned around and looked at them. "We remember this kid bragging to us before that this ship didn't have a propulsion system. Do you still remember?" When Li Shimin said this, Zhang Sun Wuji's heart trembled. He couldn't help but ask, could it be that this place is going to install the steam engine that the kid mentioned? When Zhang Sun Wuji said this, Li Shimin suddenly understood. However, he also understood the situation on the mountain. If he wanted to study it, he could only wait until everything on the mountain was settled. He then asked, "General Zhang, can this ship be driven?" "Yes, but in terms of speed, it is the same as a normal ship. It isn't at the terrifying level that Prince Zhang said it could travel millions of li in a day." Of course, it wasn't at that level. Li Shimin knew this. After all, the steam engine hadn't been created yet. This ship could only reach its limit. Thinking of this, Li Shimin couldn't help but sigh deeply. How much iron is left in the shipyard now? How many ships are still under construction? When Li Shimin asked this question, Zhang Liang's face couldn't help but turn bitter. Replying to the emperor, "The iron that can be used in the shipyard has been smelted. However, at present, there is only enough iron for half a ship. Basically, the shipyard has no iron at this time. The original iron source was directly announced to be out of stock yesterday morning. Basically, in 3 days, the shipyard will have to stop work." When Li Shimin heard this, his face turned cold. The people next to him also saw the anger in Li Shimin's eyes. They couldn't help but feel nervous. Looking at the empty hole, Li Shimin's eyes suddenly burst out with killing intent. "It's time to go to the mountain. These 7 clans are really too much. Do they really think that we are easy to bully?" Chapter 1166. The incident at the shipyard didn't spread. However, after Li Shimin left the ship, he went straight to Shao Mountain. However, this still caused this matter to be in hot water. Most importantly, the people from the 5 families and 7 clans were still quietly waiting for something. They seemed to be waiting to see how Li Shimin would deal with this matter. But in the end, they heard a rumor in the crowd. It seemed that there was a problem with the ship's construction and the emperor was angry. This time, the spies from the 5 surnames and 7 clans were also confused. They didn't know what was going on, but they still spread the news immediately. As for the shrewd people in the crowd who knew these people, they immediately realized a problem. Why did the metal disappear for no reason? On the other side, when Wei Zheng and the others were about to reach the mountain, they hurriedly returned to Chang, and with Li Shimin's orders. Li Shimin and little Gizi went to White Deer College alone. Li Shimin hadn't been to White Deer College for a long time. The last time he came, it was at night and he didn't notice the situation in the college. At this time, when he went up the mountain, he saw that the 2 stones at the gate had been engraved with gold powder. In the middle of the gate, there was a statue of an old man that Li Shimin didn't recognize. He had a big beard and a pair of sunglasses that Zhang Feng had given to Li Chengqian. Li Shimin couldn't help but ask in confusion, "Who is this person?" Little Gizi was worried for a long time, but he still didn't know what was going on. He hurriedly went up to the only entrance of the gate and asked around. Then he said in a trembling voice, "Your Majesty, they don't know either. I heard that he is Prince Zhang's teacher." Teacher? Hearing this, Li Shimin couldn't help but look at him with interest. This statue's hair was actually not the same hairstyle as it was now. Instead, it was short and combed in the middle. Although it looked a little awkward, it had its own unique style. The thing over his eyes set off his face value, which was not considered fat. Although he looked a little ordinary, there was also a unique charm to him. On his body, he was wearing something that couldn't be described. It looked like a cloak, but it didn't look like one. The clothing was also very strange. Li Shimin didn't know which country this clothing came from. Then he remembered that Zhang Feng had said that his teacher had traveled around the world. Li Shimin was even more convinced. Or else, how could Zhang Feng know so much at such a young age? Thinking of this, Li Shimin's eyes were slightly burning. He bowed to the statue, then slowly walked up the mountain with his hands behind his back. In the mountain, the places where the houses and shacks were built before had been planted with green holly trees. On the cement ground on the mountain path, there were also craftsmen laying something on it. Although it smelled a little pungent and it was a little sticky when stepping on it, it was very comfortable. This undoubtedly brought another surprise to Li Shimin. Li Shimin couldn't help but make a small calculation in his heart. Thinking of the cement ground on this abandoned mountain and the palace, Li Shimin couldn't help but feel a little jealous. He didn't use this thing, but this kid actually wasted it here? This was all money. Thinking of this, Li Shimin walked up the mountain faster. On the road, Gan Ziyuan saw Li Shimin early. He wanted to kneel down and greet him, but he didn't dare. He could only clasp his fist to Li Shimin in return. Li Shimin smiled and pointed to the black thing on the ground and asked, "What is this thing?" "This is something we got from Niu Pai Huang's rubber factory. The director said that we should use it on the roads. Now, the roads on the mountain are all paved with it. At first, it smells a little bad, but after this thing dries, it's fine. It's very soft. The director calls this thing asphalt." Asphalt? Li Shimin heard a new term again. Just when Li Shimin wanted to ask Gan Ziyuan to send someone to make this thing in his palace, he happened to hear Zhang Feng's voice. "Hey, what a rare guest. Lao Li, why are you here?" When Li Shimin heard that, he laughed bitterly and said, "Good lad, where did you go this time? What is this thing on the ground?" Li Shimin had a lot to say, but this wasn't the place to talk. He put his arm around Zhang Feng's shoulder and walked up the mountain. As they walked, Zhang Feng kept bragging to Li Shimin about how he wanted to make the mountain look like. When Li Shimin sat down in Zhang Feng's cabin, it was already half an hour later. At this time, Shiva didn't wait for Zhang Feng to speak. He took the initiative to serve tea and stood to the side. Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng and said, "Feng, I have a good thing and a bad thing to say. Which one do you want to hear?" "The bad thing." Chapter 1167. Zhang Feng didn't even think about it. Li Shimin didn't know what to say after hearing Zhang Feng's words. He smacked his lips and said, "The bad thing is, there's no iron." "There's no iron?" Zhang Feng paused for a moment, but he didn't think much about it and asked again, "What's the good thing?" While talking, Zhang Feng gave Li Shimin and Shiva a cigarette and asked Shiva to sit down. After lighting the cigarette, Li Shimin said, "The good thing is, there's news from the shipyard. The iron ship is ready according to your request." "Really?" Zhang Feng was a little excited. But after thinking about it, he felt that something was wrong. Damn it. The ship was made, but there's no iron? Lao Li, tell me, isn't there a lot of iron? Why is there no iron? Seeing that Zhang Feng finally realized the big problem, Li Shimin smiled bitterly and said, "Do you still remember what happened in Lantian? When you were in Lantian, didn't you see someone? I suspect that he's from the Wang clan. In addition, I heard from Lord Zhang's son that in today's morning court, those people from the Wang clan wanted to gang up on you, but later those dukes and the emperor protected you, but the emperor was also very dissatisfied with you because of this. Shiva couldn't help but frown. Zhang Feng's face was also a little gloomy. Damn it, Lao Tzu didn't mess with you, but you're messing with me first? At this time, Li Shimin didn't need to say anything. These mines were basically in the hands of the Wang clan in Taiyuan. As for the other families, although they also had mines, according to historical records, only the Wang clan had the most iron. Although there were many coal mines in Xianxia, they occupied more than half of the iron mines in the Tang dynasty. The shipyard had no iron. What did that mean? Zhang Feng saw the Chang and shipyard from afar when he was strolling around. He knew the rules of that place. At that time, there was an endless stream of merchants transporting coal, charcoal, and iron ore from morning till night. Now that there was no iron, there could only be one reason. Someone had destroyed this thing at the source. Otherwise, in this world, other than the Wang clan, there were other places that had iron. However, this was the only place that could make a shipyard run out of iron. Besides, not only the shipyard, but the smelter on the mountain also seemed to be unable to hold on for much longer. Once he ran out of iron, everything that Zhang Feng had planned to do in the future, including his plan to increase his reputation, would go down the drain. I have something to say. Right at this moment, Shiva said softly in a timid voice. Zhang Feng and Li Shimin looked at Shiva at the same time. This fellow's identity was not simple. Now that he could speak, could it be that this kid, if you have something to say, then say it. Could it be that you want to transport iron ore from Zhenla to Chang'an? Zhang Feng instantly thought of this point. But then he saw Shiva nod. Zhang Feng frowned slightly and looked at Li Shimin. Lao Li, do you think it's feasible? Li Shimin frowned slightly. It's feasible, but from Zhenla, we have to pass through the places of the 5 surnames and 7 clans. It's inevitable that there will be some mistakes. This is not a solution. Then you mean? Almost at the same time, Li Shimin and Zhang Feng asked at the same time. The next moment, the two said again, or do we have to deal with the threat of the 5 surnames and 7 clans? Shiva was dumbfounded. How could these two think and say the same thing? Li Shimin nodded slightly. It seems that we have the same idea. This time it's not Guanlong's people. Although Guanlong is also a big clan, after all these years, coupled with Emperor Yang of Sui's targeting, they can no longer stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans. Coupled with the trade with them, although they won't do anything to us, you can't expect them to help you in this matter. Yes, we have to think of a foolproof plan. Li Shimin had a headache. The sphere of influence of the 5 surnames and 7 clans was too large. The most important thing was that these people were of the same breadth and branch. If one of them had a problem, the other 6 would definitely not ignore it. Li Shimin couldn't help but think of a way, and that was the method that Zhang Feng had used to deal with Guanlong. He asked, why don't we use Guanlong's method on them? Hearing this, Zhang Feng smiled somewhat speechlessly. Do you want to let the tiger return to the mountain, or do you want to draw fire to yourself? I did think about it last time. Did you think that my plan last time was really to deal with Guanlong? Are they worthy? Li Shimin was stunned. Shiva was also stunned. Was it not? Zhang Feng had a headache as he smoked. Last time, my main target was still the Wang clan of Taiyuan. As long as I took him down, then the mineral resources of the world would basically be in my hands. However, these guys simply hid too well. No matter what I did, they still refused to show up. So, for the time being, Guanlong's people benefited. The plan that Zhang Feng had formulated previously was indeed to deal with the 5 surnames and 7 clans. However, these guys were simply monkeys to the extreme and were extremely united. They were basically in an invulnerable state. Now, to deal with them, it was really a little difficult. Zhang Feng was silent. Li Shimin and Shiva saw Zhang Feng's expression and didn't say anything. They could only wait silently. At this time, they could only see if Zhang Feng had a solution. If even Zhang Feng didn't have a solution, then Li Shimin could only use that method. Although he really didn't want to use it, but these 5 surnames and 7 clans really needed to be taught a lesson. Chapter 1168. I see. After a moment of silence, Zhang Feng muttered, things are a little tricky, but it's not impossible. Li Shimin's eyes lit up when he heard that. Tell me about it. Zhang Feng smiled slyly. Actually, it's still the same old way. Attack with public opinion. Didn't he stop the iron mines? Believe it or not, he'll stop the supply of coal next. In that case, seeing that it's already the autumn planting season, the people need iron farming tools more urgently than us. The 5 families and 7 major clans have thought of a way to remove the firewood from under the cauldron, but this is also our chance. You're saying, Li Shimin instantly thought of Zhang Feng's promotion of the bone-strengthening powder and deep-fried locusts in Chang'an City. However, at this time, Zhang Feng's words made Li Shimin feel that if they spread the rumors at this time, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Not only did he offend Zhang Feng and himself this time, but he also directly disregarded the lives of the people. Would the people agree? However, Li Shimin also knew that this was almost impossible. He couldn't help but ask, this is a good idea, but how can we make the people really like what we think? Do you still need to think about it? Have you ever heard of a saying, water can carry a boat, but it can also sink it? After saying that, Zhang Feng slapped his forehead and said, I forgot, this is what the current emperor said. You probably haven't heard it, water can carry a boat, but it can also sink it. Li Shimin's mind was a little shaken. He really didn't know that he had said this sentence, and he didn't know where this kid heard it from. However, this sentence seemed to be very true. However, this wasn't the time to talk about this. Li Shimin shook his mind and hurriedly asked, then tell me, how are you going to deal with those people? Do we still need to deal with the people? Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin deeply. Seeing that Li Shimin really didn't understand, he slowly said, in fact, I just said that water can carry a boat, but it can also sink it. The 5 families and 7 major clans are the boat, and the people are the water. Do you think their behavior this time has endangered the lives of the people? The people of the Tang dynasty in the south suffered floods this year, the drought in the north, plus the locust plague and food shortage. I believe that there aren't many people in the Tang dynasty who have surplus food. There aren't many people who can survive until next year. Li Shimin seemed to understand something. He nodded and motioned for Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng then said, actually, this matter is very easy to deal with. Right now, all the people have placed their hopes on this autumn planting. Food is their lifeblood. Now that there are people who want to kill them, do you think the people still need us to incite them? If killing people isn't illegal, I think that as long as we spread the news, they will be killed by countless people in an instant. Hearing this, Li Shimin couldn't help but be shocked. Shiva also seemed to understand something. At this time, he couldn't help but exclaim, Teacher, you mean, we just need to spread the news? Zhang Feng looked at Shiva with some admiration and said, that's right. Continue to talk about your thoughts. After all, you are also a prince. I also want to see how much you have learned from me. Hearing this, Li Shimin slightly raised his eyebrows. After all, this person was not from the Tang dynasty. Although he reluctantly let him come, he didn't want him to learn too much. This person was not from the Tang dynasty. In addition, which one of the things Zhang Feng came up with wasn't beneficial to the country and the people? This, Li Shimin couldn't help but pricked up his ears. He wanted to hear what this Prince Junla Shiva had learned. Shiva was a little embarrassed, but when he saw that Li Shimin's expression didn't change, he breathed a sigh of relief. This student heard from Tang and the others a few times about how teacher dealt with Tubo, as well as your enthusiasm for the Guanlong aristocrats this time, and summed it up myself. It's like this. This student believes that there is indeed no way to deal with such a monolithic entity. However, if we were to break through from the weakest point, this student believes that we can make use of public opinion as the main attack. Then we can send people to find the iron ore. In this way, wouldn't the Tang dynasty be able to overcome this crisis in an instant? That's right. Zhang Feng patted Shiva's shoulder and praised, although what you said is a little one-sided and perfunctory, this is undoubtedly the best way. Didn't the 5 families and 7 clans claim to have all the mineral veins in the world? Didn't they claim that as long as there are mineral veins in the world, there is nothing they can't find? But this coal mine in Lantian, how did we find it? What does this mean? It means that the Taiyuan Wang clan is not invincible. This iron, or if it was someone else, they really wouldn't be able to find it. Seeing Zhang Feng smiling so cheekily at this time, Li Shimin's eyes couldn't help but light up. Kid, don't tell me you have another idea? Zhang Feng smiled confidently. He took a puff of his cigarette and said, "What is the place above Longsho Mountain called?" Zhang Feng was really an idiot about the names of places in the Tang dynasty. Even though he had seen many maps, he still didn't know about many places. Above Longsho Mountain was Luochuan in northern Xianxia, but this place didn't seem to be called Luochuan. He couldn't say that it was Luochuan in northern Xianxia, could he? It would be strange if he wasn't treated as a freak. Li Shimin was a little confused, but he still said, "That place is called Longsho Mountain." "What's wrong?" "That's right." Zhang Feng slammed the table and said excitedly, "Send people to look in that direction. Last night, I was watching the stars and found that there was a strange light flashing in that place. Come on." Li Shimin was speechless and interrupted Zhang Feng. He said with a headache, "Don't brag. Are you sure there is an iron ore there?" Chapter 1169. Zhang Feng naturally knew that what he said was not true. However, he did not know where the iron mine was. He only heard that there was a super large iron mine in Luochuan. Zhang Feng patted his chest and said, "If there isn't, we'll do whatever you say." "Okay, that's enough. Gizi, did you hear that? Send people to Longsho Mountain to find it immediately." "Yes." Li Shimin was not careless. He made a prompt decision to transfer people out. If there really was an iron mine, if there was an iron mine above and a coal mine below, the 5 families and 7 major clans would not be able to suppress the military enterprises of the Tang dynasty and the production and living of the people. This was really good news for Li Shimin. He could not help but be excited. Xianxia City was still waiting for military supplies. Although he had secretly gathered hundreds of skilled blacksmiths and smelters in the Tang dynasty, he still could not replace the triangular bayonets for all the soldiers. Not to mention, the firearms that Zhang Feng mentioned were still in the process of developing the parts. Even if he wanted to deal with the 5 families and 7 major clans, he had to have something to take out. At the very least, with the iron mine and coal mine, he would have a strong army of his own. This was the most important thing. With military power in his hands, who would Li Shimin be afraid of? However, the most frightening thing was still the problem of resources. Once there was a shortage of iron, the forging workshop on the mountain would stop working for a day. This would be a huge loss. He could not afford to lose it. He could not afford to wait. He could not afford to wait. In addition, the situation on Jin La's side and Tubo's side could not be relaxed. Once the news that the 5 families and 7 major clans had blocked the iron mine of the Tang dynasty spread, then the consequences would be unimaginable. Thinking of this, Li Shimin could not help but ask worriedly, "Fengzi, doesn't that mean that the firearms, the forging workshop on the mountain will also go on strike?" "It can't be, right?" Zhang Feng wasn't sure. "I remember that I went there yesterday and saw that there was a lot of iron ore and scrap iron. It shouldn't stop production. You can rest assured about that. However, where is the sword you promised to give me, Yang Guang's personal sword?" When Li Shimin said this, Zhang Feng remembered this matter again and asked. Li Shimin was stunned. Only then did he remember this matter. He laughed awkwardly and said, "I'm sorry. Next time, I won't wait for you to open the academy. How about I personally send you up the mountain? We should be nearing the Great Pass by now." Zhang Feng was speechless. But he didn't force it. Forget it, forget it. Let's not talk about it." Li Shimin hurriedly asked, "You should be aware of the current situation. If the Indian and Tubo Turks know about this, the 100,000 soldiers in Xianxia will probably be isolated. The southern gate of the Tang dynasty will be wide open. Firearms? Any signs?" Yes. Don't rush me. In 10 days, at most 10 days, I'll be able to get it done." Zhang Feng was a little guilty. Previously, he had indeed patted his chest and promised that he would be able to get it done before the academy opened. But he didn't expect this thing to be so complicated. Without the help of the advanced technology of the future, it was completely manual production. It was simply a waste of time. But he had no other choice. Who asked this matter to be so difficult to handle? At this time, the seamless barrel of the firearms had just been developed and was still in the state of being polished. After thinking of many ways, he had no choice but to use a water wheel and sand to make a model of a perpetual motion machine. Only then did this matter stabilize. As for the manufacturing of the gun bolt and other complicated things, although he had handed it over to Arcanon, it was still Zhang Feng who took care of the tedious matters. As for the locksmiths, proud and arrogant, they were kicked down the mountain by Zhang Feng the next day. You motherf***, you don't do anything. If everything is right, what does Lao Tzu need you for? But Li Shimin was still a little worried. After all, Zhang Feng's expression was a little evasive. He asked uncertainly, Fengzi, are you sure? This matter can't be joked about. I swear it's true. Zhang Feng hurriedly said with certainty. Then, Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted, well, I still have things to do on the mountain. You guys talk first, I'll be back soon. After saying that, Zhang Feng wanted to slip away, but Li Shimin had already seen through everything and stopped him. Oh right, I still have things to do. This is just one of them. Take a look at this thing called asphalt of yours. Can you give me the recipe? After all, the place where I live now is still. Sure. Go back and tell your son that this matter is under his management, but don't think about the asphalt for now. That thing can wait until I find the asphalt mine. At this time, this is not enough for me to use on the mountain. As for the cement, you can get as much as you want. I have a lot of it here. I really have something to do, Lao Li, I'll leave first. While saying that, Zhang Feng hurriedly slipped away while Li Shimin was still in a daze. He had to run. The Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet was the day after tomorrow. Once the meet ended, it would be the day of the opening of the school. Adding up the whole process, it was less than 5 days. If he did not give it his all in 5 days, how could he get the firearms? Damn it. He was too careless. Chapter 1170. As soon as Zhang Feng left the hut, he rushed to the workshop to check on the situation. If what Old Li said was true, then this matter was really serious. This was not only because of the iron but also because of the firearms. He did not expect that the people of the 5 surnames and 7 nobles would calculate the time so viciously. They were so impatient that they wanted to make a move? Could it be that they had predicted what would happen in the future and deliberately waited for this moment to deal with him? Now was not the time to think about this. After pondering for a while, Zhang Feng decided to personally supervise the production of the firearms. After all, if he really went against the 5 surnames and 7 expectations, then the firearms would be his biggest barrier. Only when he had a sense of security in his own hands would he be truly safe. Anything brought by others would be nonsense. At the thought of this, Zhang Feng no longer hesitated and hurried to the smithing workshop. He even greeted everyone along the way vaguely, thus fooling them. The amount of steel consumed on the mountain was uncountable. He was not sure how much iron and steel was left on the mountain. If there was no more, then this time, it would be very interesting. He had to quickly change his plan. If there was, then the matter of the 5 surnames and 7 expectations could be delayed. After all, Zhang Feng did not expect to be shameless with the 5 surnames and 7 expectations so soon. Once they were shameless, would the 5 surnames and 7 expectations, who did not even put Li Shimin in their eyes, care about a small shrimp like him? At this time, the workshop had expanded by at least 10 times from its original location at the edge of the cliff. The edge of the cliff had become the core area of the workshop. Usually, there would be countless sturdy guards patrolling back and forth. The number of people in the forging workshop had also increased from 30 top-notch blacksmiths captured from the western region to about 70 people. Half of these people were the original people, while the other half were top-notch blacksmiths that Old Li had found at the foot of the mountain. They specialized in refining steel. As for those people before him, they were researching firearms and manufacturing related technologies. Now that Arcanon and Mokido had more time, they were fully immersed in the study of the principles of firearms. After all, the situation in the north was tense. As for Lao Li's businesses, he didn't know how long they would last. These were all money. If it was really Lao Li's alone, then Zhang Feng wouldn't hesitate to ask him to give it up. These guns could be used for anything. But now, the academy needed money everywhere, and some of these industries belonged to him. Most importantly, Once Chiaotzi City was stabilized, it would be very important for trade. It was the key channel to the Middle East. This was the reason why Zhang Feng insisted on analyzing that if they really wanted to rescue Zhenla, they would have to besiege Wei to rescue Zhao. After all, this Chiaotzi was the key to the problem. It didn't matter if the Turks were an army or if they had obtained any benefits from Tubo and India. Once they returned to the Turks, Chiaotzi would be their greatest obstacle. They would take this city. He didn't expect brother Lao Li to really tell this to Lord Zhangsun. Although Zhang Feng absolutely believed that he could think of this point, how could Li Shimin, who had the 4 war gods, not think of this point? However, Zhang Feng could not help but suspect that the emperor had planted a spy by his side because of the repeated coincidences with his own ideas. But now wasn't the time to think about this. By the time Zhang Fengyi raised his head, the workshop had already entered his sight. At the entrance of the workshop was a huge boulder. Arkanon was squatting on the boulder and smoking with a frown on his face. The guard at the entrance of the forge was the first to notice Zhang Feng. He immediately exclaimed, "Isn't this the dean? The dean is here. Everyone come out." Following this roar, everyone suddenly turned to look at the entrance of the mountain, at the white-clothed youth who had hurriedly arrived. If this person wasn't Zhang Feng, who else could it be? Arkanon also noticed Zhang Feng from this roar. He hurriedly stood up and bowed, "Dean." At this moment, he was already full of admiration for Zhang Feng. The internal structure of the godly weapon, which had dozens of components, could actually be assembled into a gun that could be picked up with one hand. How miraculous was this? At this moment, it wasn't just Arkanon. Everyone in the forge was also full of admiration for Zhang Feng. When everyone heard the commotion, no matter how busy they were, they had to stop and hurry to Zhang Feng's side to greet Zhang Feng along with Arkanon. "Greetings, Dean." Chapter 1171. Before this, Zhang Feng only had envy, respect, and yearning for them. But after seeing Gao Feng bring those people up the mountain during the mid-autumn hunt, and seeing the unconventional changes in the academy and the miraculous ability of exchanging lives with blood, everyone started to respect Wang Zheng. Everyone set up a godly position for Zhang Feng in their hearts. Except for the immortals. Who could exchange lives with blood? Who could even connect necrotic bones? This made everyone admire Zhang Feng from the bottom of their hearts. It seemed that at this time, Zhang Feng had become a goal that everyone on the mountain wanted to pursue. If they didn't put in some effort, they would have the illusion that it would be very embarrassing. Zhang Feng's interest was also piqued. After greeting everyone with a smile, he asked everyone to return to their posts. However, the guards were reluctant to leave. After all, they were recruited by Cripple Wang. Although they had informed Zhang Feng in advance, this was the first time they saw the real Zhang Feng. Who would not be excited to be in such close contact with him? They rubbed their hands and wanted to say something to Zhang Feng, but Zhang Feng was not interested in talking at this time. He could not find Mokido. He looked around at the dozens of burly men who had just recognized him and asked, "You are?" Zhang Feng promised. He really did not know these people. It was as if they had just appeared on the mountain. He had not seen these people in the forging workshop before. If it was under normal circumstances, Zhang Feng would not bother to pay attention to them. However, this was not a normal time. This was a special time, and Zhang Feng could not help but be more careful. When the guard commander saw this, he quickly said, "Headmaster, my name is Chuck. I was introduced by Cripple Wang. I used to be a soldier in the Shazhou military camp." Hearing this, Zhang Feng suddenly realized and said, "So you were introduced by Brother Wang. Then you can stay here first. When the academy stabilizes, we will talk about other things. How about that?" Zhang Feng was not in the mood to deal with these trivial matters. Zhang Feng's words were like an imperial edict. At this time, these veterans were so surprised that they trembled with excitement. After all, for people like them, once they retired from the 5th Military High School, other than guarding other people's homes, doing odd jobs, or escorting some goods, they would only be left with the lowest job. At worst, they could only squat outside the city and wait for food or run errands for others. However, at this time, not only could they survive on the mountain, they could also earn more money than anywhere else in half a year. How could they not be excited? Not to mention that a position in White Deer Academy was extremely popular. It was rumored that even a crippled old soldier was able to obtain a beautiful woman to serve in White Deer Academy. Who wouldn't desire such a position? Who did not want to stay on the mountain? Everyone wanted to stay. Zhang Feng did not know what they were thinking, nor did he have the mood to know. Even if he knew, what could he say? As a person who had made great contributions to the country, he would do whatever he could to help. This was a piece of cake for him. Moreover, he could get a few more helpers. That was all. At this time, on a remote mountain outside the workshop, Zhang Feng, Mokido, and Arkanon were sitting behind a large rock that was blown away by the wind. Zhang Feng asked, "Let me ask you too, how many iron ores are left in the forge? Or are you talking about scrap iron?" Mokido didn't know why Zhang Feng asked this, but since Zhang Feng asked, he didn't dare to not answer. He quickly replied, "Dean, there are still about 100,000 stones of iron on the mountain. As for scrap iron, there should be about 50,000 stones." Mokido didn't know why Zhang Feng asked this, but since Zhang Feng asked, he didn't dare to not answer. "How long can it last?" Hearing this, Mokido and Algernon were stunned. Didn't they ship iron ores to the mountain every day? Although the amount delivered these 2 days was a bit small, the two of them didn't care. At this time, after hearing Zhang Feng's words, the two of them couldn't help but have some doubts in their hearts. However, they still didn't know where the problem was. They just felt that there was something wrong. Algernon quickly said, "If there are only a few ores left in the mountain, based on the amount of ores sent to the foot of the mountain every day, it should be able to last for about 10 days. However, I can't guarantee that these ores can last for 10 days. This was Algernon's most conservative estimate. It was based on the amount of ores stored and the amount needed every day. If they included the ores that were not smelted in time and the ores in the furnace, they should be able to last for another half a month. However, could it be that there were no more iron ores at the foot of the mountain? The two of them seemed to have thought of this at the same time. They could not help but look at each other. Zhang Feng frowned slightly. 10 days. This meant that the ores on the mountain, as well as the ores stored for research and development, as well as the ores used for experiments, could only last for 10 days? What if they could not find ores or transport ores after 10 days? Zhang Feng could not help but feel his scalp go numb. Zhang Feng sighed. "From now on, I will personally supervise the production of some of the secret parts of the gun. All the research on the mountain will be suspended. Just send the ores to the foot of the mountain on time every day." As for the mountain, Zhang Feng pondered for a moment before saying, "Prioritize the research on the gun first. As for the rest, we will talk about it after we find the ores." Now, Arkanon and Mokido finally understood why Zhang Feng had suddenly asked about this. This was exactly as he had predicted. There were no more ores. Chapter 1172. There were only 3 days left before the start of the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet. After deciding on the direction of their future research, Lin Li and Arkanon rushed into the cave that had been expanded into a warehouse and a workshop. The cave was no longer the same as it used to be. At this moment, all the smelting equipment had been moved outside. Although there was no sound in the cave, Zhang Feng could not help but feel nauseous due to the combination of heat and stuffiness, the sour stench of smoke, and the stench of feet. However, Arkanon and the others seemed to have gotten used to this smell since they were young. For them, Zhang Feng seriously wondered if they had fallen in love with the smell. With the passage of time, Zhang Feng had already learned from the others. He took off his clothes until he was only left with a pair of underpants. He didn't even dare to sit on a stool. Hot butt. He simply lay on the table and explained the principle of the firing pin to them. However, these old perverts kept staring at his butt, which made Zhang Feng a little angry. "Damn it, why are you looking at Lao Tzu's butt?" However, he did not say it out loud. He could only patiently explain the relevant principles. He did not know how to forge these things, but he was still a talent who came from a professional class. His knowledge of oral knowledge had already reached the point of perfection. Moreover, he had trained in the great Tang dynasty for so long, so he knew a little about what to make for these people at this time and place. Even though Zhang Feng had already skipped the most important parts, these people still felt uncomfortable listening to Zhang Feng. However, They were deeply attracted by the mechanical structure and the interlocking mechanism described by Zhang Feng. It was not easy. Zhang Feng explained this matter from beginning to end for at least 6 hours. He even directly picked up the charcoal on the ground and listed out the calculation formulas on a piece of white paper over and over again for everyone. After much difficulty, he finally taught everyone how to do it. When Zhang Feng walked out of the workshop, he felt as if he had taken a walk in hell. His mouth was dry and his eyes were blurred. At this time, he just wanted to find a jar of water and take a big gulp. "Dean, you're out?" At this time, the guard commander, Chuckle, came forward and handed a cucumber to Zhang Feng. He was a little distressed, but he still handed it to Zhang Feng as if nothing had happened. "Dean, I know you're not used to the tea there, so I've already prepared a cucumber for you." Cucumber was the old name of cucumber. Looking at the cucumber in Chuckle's hand, Zhang Feng's eyes lit up. He took it, wiped it, and began to eat it. After eating 2 cucumbers, Zhang Feng finally calmed down. He cupped his hands towards Chuckle and said, "Thank you. You don't have to say, this thing doesn't taste good on a normal day, but now that I'm eating it, it really does feel good." "What's your name?" Zhang Feng wanted to say thanks, but he really couldn't remember the veteran's name. The veteran didn't mind and laughed. "Dean, call me Chuckle. Old Chuckle is fine." "All right, Dean, I heard from the brothers at the foot of the mountain that someone in the market said that the iron on the mountain is about to run out. Is that true?" When Zhang Feng heard this, he couldn't help but become alert and asked, "Who did you hear that from?" Without waiting for Chuckle to speak, Zhang Sun rushed over breathlessly. "Fengzi, let's go, there's a problem." Zhang Xuan's iconic off-white robe, coupled with his coquettish style and the embroidery of white deer college that was one size larger than others to show off his status, coupled with his current appearance, really made Zhang Feng turn pale with fright. He thought that someone from the 5 surnames and 7 desires had come to attack him. He hurriedly asked, "What happened?" Zhang Sun was gasping for breath. How could he have the time to talk? He just pulled Zhang Feng along and ran. He also grabbed the remaining courgette in Chuckle's arms and gnawed on it as he ran. Zhang Feng really didn't know what had happened, but he knew that if it wasn't something huge, Zhang Sun wouldn't be like this. Zhang Feng didn't say anything. At this moment, he couldn't speak even if he wanted to. With Zhang Xuan's speed, Zhang Feng seriously doubted that if Lu Xiang was here and ran at the same time, Lu Xiang wouldn't even be able to see this guy's shadow. What the hell? Zhang Feng was almost caught between Zhang Xuan's arms. Even so, Zhang Feng still felt like he was about to suffocate. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the two hurriedly returned to the small wooden house. The small wooden house was already filled with people. Even Gao Can and Yuchi Baolin had returned from the army. Seeing Zhang Feng like this, Gao Can instantly stood up and directly lifted Zhang Feng from Zhang Xuan's pigeon nest. He pushed Zhang Feng to the head of the table and then stood behind Zhang Feng. Just like before. Zhang Feng wanted to shout. But at this moment he was so tired that he was about to faint. He was too lazy to shout. He looked at everyone and asked, "What happened? Why did you all come back?" The day after tomorrow, the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet. Hearing this, Zhang Feng's expression became unusually interesting. He pointed at Li Chengqian, trembling with anger. That's it. Chapter 1173. Because of this thing, he was directly caught by Zhang Sun and brought back from the workshop. Even if Zhang Sun was chasing him, he wouldn't be so crazy, right? This was going to cost him his life. But it was useless to say this now. Zhang Feng calmed down for quite a while before he recovered. His face was dark as he gulped down a large basin of water. Only then did he comfortably lean back on the chair. "Tell me, you guys didn't come back because of the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet, right?" Li Chengqian nodded and put away the folding fan in his hand. He nodded and said, "Indeed. Just 2 hours ago, someone spread the news about the shipyard and the lack of iron in the shipyard on the mountain. Do you know?" Zhang Feng glanced at Li Chengqian and then at the people sitting there. He suddenly realized something. This method seemed very familiar. "Did you guys do this?" Li Chengqian and the others couldn't help but burst into laughter. "I told you we can't hide this from Fengzi. You guys didn't believe me. Do you believe me now?" Mother f***ker, Are you guys looking for trouble? Zhang Feng exploded. These people were so stupid that he wanted to cry. They did think about spreading the news about the lack of iron, and Lao Li also mentioned it. But now, why did they spread the news about what happened on the mountain? This was equivalent to adding fuel to the fire, okay? This was definitely not something that Lao Li would dare to do. It was definitely done by these idiots. Otherwise, these people wouldn't be so happy at this time. Du Go saw that Zhang Feng's expression was abnormal at this time and was about to flip out. He hurriedly said, "Fengzi, we did this because Lao Li told us to." Zhang Feng was stunned when he heard this. He asked, "Why did Lao Li do this?" What he means is that in this way, you can stimulate the anger of the masses faster. At this time, you have already become a godlike existence in the hearts of the people in Chang. Think about it, if you lack iron, how can the people at the foot of the mountain not be anxious? In just 2 hours, the market at the foot of the mountain has collected about thousands of kilograms of ironware, not including those delivered to Chang and city. By doing this, on the one hand, it can ensure that the forge on the mountain will not stop, and on the other hand, it will arouse the hatred of the people. Isn't this the psychological warfare that you taught us before? Zhang Feng was taken aback. That's right. By doing so, the power of the masses would be unleashed to the maximum. Most importantly, this matter was a double-edged sword. Once it got out, it would bring both advantages and disadvantages to him and the people of the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. The key to weighing the pros and cons was whether they could find the iron or within this period of time. Zhang Feng looked at the crowd at this time and sighed heavily. He spread out his hands and said, "Come on, this matter is not good for any of us. If we can't find the iron or, let's wait and play." Li Chengqian heard this and could not help but be surprised. He said, "Didn't you say that there is an iron ore on Longsho Mountain? Could it be? Longsho Mountain is so big. Are you stupid? Are you sure that once you find it, you can move it back and use it? Won't it take time to move it back and forth? Besides, this thing is definitely underground. If you really do that to him, then this time, it will be a big joke. Do you understand?" Zhang Feng forgot to tell Lao Li that the Luochuan iron mine was the same as the coal mines in Lantian County. They were both underground mines. How could they have a chance to get it? It would have been dug out by the Wang clan. Li Chengqian and the others became anxious when Zhang Feng said this. If that was the case, then there was really a big problem. Once they could not find the iron ore, it would be self-defeating. They could not help but look at Zhang Feng in a hurry, trying to find a way to remedy the situation. What could Zhang Feng do at this time? Looking at the few of them staring at each other for a long time, they finally took a deep breath. Everyone thought that Zhang Feng had a solution, but after waiting for a long time, they heard Zhang Feng's 2 words. "Get out." Zhang Feng was really stumped this time. The root of all the problems was to solve the crisis of the iron shortage first, then find the people with the 5 surnames and 7 hopes to settle the score. However, he forgot that these idiots would directly lay their cards on the table. What was there to fight then? Before he even took action, he had already revealed his secret. How could this be? Li Chengqian and the others were also a little confused. It was the first time they met Zhang Feng, but they could not handle things well. They could not help but squat in front of Zhang Feng's door, looking at each other with a guilty conscience. There are only 3 days left until the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet. If this is not the case, let's go and find... Oh, right. Li Chengqian slapped his head and pointed at Yuqi Baolin. "You Baolin, do you still remember what happened in Jiangnan? I remember that there is an iron ore in Jiangnan. Why don't you contact your aunt? I think once your aunt knows about Fengzi's situation, she will probably take action." Yuqi Baolin stared at Li Chengqian in a muffled voice. He said unhappily, "If you want to ask, you can send someone to ask. I can't be bothered. I'm afraid of being beaten up." "You can't say that, Baolin. We are all doing this for Fengzi, for our father. You have to think carefully. Even your father and my father can't do this. I think Fengzi can't bring himself to do it. Only you are the most suitable at this time." Chapter 1174. In the span of 3 days, Zhang Feng, the people on the mountain, and the people at the foot of the mountain were all busy with the iron mine. The rumor at the foot of the mountain eventually reached the ears of Yu Shinan and the others. Originally, the four of them were busy preparing the teaching materials and had to work overtime at night. They did not expect Zhang Feng to be such a troublemaker. On the eve of the Mid-Autumn Festival, they finally finished preparing the teaching materials with great difficulty. But it was also at this time that the four of them were preparing to go to Zhang Feng to discuss the Mid-Autumn Festival poetry meet with him. Unexpectedly, they heard about this matter. They could not help but feel a little annoyed. "You are the dean of the academy. Why do you have to worry so much?" They clasped their hands behind their backs and walked into Zhang Feng's cabin with gloomy faces. Cheng Chumo and the others, who were studying the rhythm of the final dance rehearsal, did not dare to stay any longer. They fled in panic. This time, it was Zhang Feng who suffered. Looking at their unfriendly faces, how could Zhang Feng not know that they knew about the iron mine? "Kid, let me ask you. We just heard that the Chang and shipyard made an iron ship. Was it your work?" Zhang Feng hurriedly waved his hand and said, "No, no, no. Respected teachers, I have been on the mountain all this time. Where would I have the time to make such a thing? I'm not a blacksmith." This was something that he could not admit to no matter what. Once he admitted to it, he would be done for. But although his idea was good, would Yu Shinan and the others believe it? Unless they were fools. Sure enough, after hearing Zhang Feng's words, Ouyang Sun was so angry that he directly slammed the table and stood up. "I knew you would say that. Kid, we also heard that you are going to go against the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. Although this is your private matter and we have no right to interfere, this matter has affected the normal operation of our academy. Once you really fall out with the 5 surnames and 7 hopes, have you thought about whether you can handle it? Don't you know the power of the 5 surnames and 7 hopes?" "I know." Zhang Feng also knew that he couldn't pretend anymore, so he could only shrug helplessly. Seeing this, even Xue Ji, who hadn't spoken much, couldn't help but frown. This brat did not look like an impulsive person. Going against the 5 surnames and 7 hopes at this time, wasn't that like hitting a rock with an egg? Couldn't he wait until he was stronger in the future? However, Zhang Feng was not a rash person. Furthermore, they were well aware of the conflict between the 5 surnames and 7 hopes and the royal family. How could they not know that the 5 surnames and 7 hopes were also testing Zhang Feng? Took drastic measures to deal with him. Once the iron boat was formed and there were many of them, it would be the first to pose a serious threat to their trade. Although Li Shimin had opened up trade on the water at this time, they had to go from Chang and to Luozhou and travel by water. Not to mention that the process was slow. Once something happened in the water, no one would know. However, the iron boat that Zhang Feng had created not only made them helpless in terms of performance, but also made them unable to do anything. It would be strange if they were not angry. In addition, the things that the emperor had done at this time and some problems that the Tang dynasty was facing at this time were more or less related to the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. Their purpose was to cut off the newly established trade route between the emperor and Zhang Feng and consolidate their own power and status. With their status, it would be easy for them to find out about this. However, why did they choose to do it at this juncture? This was worth thinking about. During the mid-autumn hunt, it was Guanlong's people who were stirring up trouble. However, Zhang Feng's magical things made Guanlong's people choose to stand on the side of interests. However, this seemed to be the most important point that had angered the 5 surnames and 7 hopes. In addition, Zhang Feng's rapidly increasing reputation value made them feel threatened. After all, they didn't care about a small shrimp, but a lively shrimp, and a shrimp that had the potential to become a dragon. They couldn't just ignore it. At this time, after Zhang Feng's explanation, the 4 finally understood the whole thing and the plan that he and the emperor had made. They once again reprimanded Zhang Feng for unifying the country and asked him to put the interests of the academy first and not always do those useless things. Only then did the joint hearing of the 4 halls end. After all, logically speaking, Zhang Feng was already qualified to be on an equal footing with them. However, Zhang Feng was a talent. They did not want Zhang Feng to ruin himself and take a detour. They wanted to see what kind of waves Zhang Feng could make. This was also their purpose of coming up the mountain. Previously, Zhang Feng had done a great thing and they had all seen it. Although this kid was indeed unreliable sometimes, he was still going in the right direction. If this matter was not handled well, it might not be just a matter of the 5 families and 7 clans of the team. Zhang Feng, this brat, might have wasted all his talent and knowledge. If it was before Zhang Feng set up the forging workshop, they would not be worried. However, this kid just had to come up with such a terrifying killing machine, then they had to treat this matter seriously. However, once they were careful, Zhang Feng would be in trouble. He was stunned by the 4 people's words for a few hours. When the cigarette was finished, the few of them strolled away. After the 4 people left, Cheng Chumo and the others walked into Zhang Feng's small wooden house with slight trepidation. They wanted to see if Zhang Feng had been tortured to death by these old guys. However, as soon as they entered the house, Zhang Feng blinked his eyes, which were originally a little stiff. "Brother Li Gan, quickly prepare the sedan. I'm going down the mountain now." Chapter 1175. At the foot of the mountain. Zhang Feng didn't go back to the Zhang mansion, because it should have been watched by someone. Just in case, Zhang Feng decided to take Cheng Chumo and the others back to the tavern. Although the tavern was very small and couldn't accommodate these 7 or 8 strong men, the brewery next to the tavern had been abandoned for a long time. It wasn't that it didn't open, but now the Tang dynasty was short of food. If a brewery was opened at this time, where would the food come from to brew wine? At this time, Cheng Chumo and the others were in the winery's only storage room, which was used to store wine and food. They had cleared out a large open space, and although they were somewhat disgusted, they still found some hay and laid it in the room. In this way, they could lie on the ground comfortably. Although it was a little unnatural, how comfortable it was to be able to live together again. Especially Li Chengqian, although he felt something, he still couldn't stop his heart from beating faster. After resting for almost an hour, Li Chengqian stared at Zhang Feng, waiting for Zhang Feng to speak. But after waiting for a long time, Zhang Feng didn't say anything, so he asked, "Fengzi, is it a little bad for us to leave without saying goodbye? After all, the mountain is in a mess at this time, and we are about to prepare for the opening of the academy." Zhang Feng put his hands behind his head and shook his head. "No, this is what Mr. Bosher and the others mean." What Mr. Bosher meant? Hearing this, they couldn't help but be stunned. They squatted at Zhang Feng's door until 4 of them left. During this time, they didn't talk about this matter. And the 4 Confucian scholars knew this would be the result. So why did they let him escape the mountain in the dark? Because they can't do this, and you will only mess things up. Guanlong and the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans must have investigated our relationship for a long time. Otherwise, they wouldn't have chosen to take action at this time. Li Chengqian was startled and hurriedly said, "If that's the case, then they also know about the shipyard?" Zhang Feng nodded noncommittally. If it wasn't for this, why would they cut off the iron ore at this time? They don't have a grudge against money. At this time, there is only one reason why they dare to do this, and that is because Guanlong's people have reached an agreement with me. In addition, the shipyard has always been a big problem for them. Once it is allowed to develop, it will inevitably make them lose most of their current commercial advantages in the Tang dynasty. Most importantly, they didn't know what the iron ship was before, nor did they know the advantages of the iron ship. But after the first one was built, they were terrified. At this moment, Cheng Chumo and the others couldn't help but sit up and surround Zhang Feng. Li Qingxian's expression finally turned serious. They must have known about the 5 surnames and 7 clans. The reason why the emperor pretended not to know that they were messing around in Chang, and was that he wanted to confuse the 5 surnames and 7 clans. If they really went to war with the 5 surnames and 7 clans, they didn't even need to think about it. There would definitely be a big problem. As for what the problem was, it had already exploded. "Li Chengqian, do you know what the world lacks the most today?" Zhang Feng stared into Li Chengqian's eyes and asked. Li Chengqian was stunned. He didn't know why Zhang Feng asked this, but he still answered, "Food." Zhang Feng nodded. "Yes. In this world, there is no stability without food. Whoever has food can be determined by the world. That's why I spent all my money to stockpile food before, and also the reason why I asked you to stockpile food. It's for the current situation. Although this iron ore is not so serious for us, and the worst-case scenario is that our shipyard temporarily goes on strike, what about the farmers? Now is the time for autumn planting. If they do this, they will simply cut off the retreat of the people. How can the people forgive them? Then what do you mean? Did you go down the mountain this time to prepare to cause trouble? Cheng Chumo's eyes lit up. He said, if that's the case, then I have a group of good brothers. They are the best at this. Zhang Feng looked disdainfully at Cheng Chumo and said, you only know how to cause trouble. Let me tell you, let's leave this matter as it is for now. We have to stabilize. If you really want to cause trouble, then ask your brothers to go to Longsho Mountain to look for ores. That's more reliable. With this, Cheng Chumo instantly fell silent. It was fine to let his brothers eat, drink, and brag, but to ask them to look for ores? Forget it. Cheng Chumo didn't dare to think about it. Zhang Feng already knew that Cheng Chumo wasn't reliable, so he didn't think much of it. However, Du Go came forward and excitedly hugged Zhang Feng's arm, scaring Zhang Feng. Fengzi, did you go down the mountain this time just to prepare for the mid-autumn poetry meet? Otherwise? Do you think I'm crazy? Zhang Feng rolled his eyes and said, now, no one is optimistic about my participation in the mid-autumn poetry meet. There are also many people who want to stop me. But if I really back down, then I will really lose this time. I have to go to the mid-autumn poetry meet, and I have to go there in a grand manner. Not only that, Li Gan, the name of this second street dance will be called the Golden Age of the Tang Dynasty. Chapter 1176. Fengzi, you're saying that we have to perform a street dance in this poetry gathering? Li Qingqian felt a little guilty. Although they had been doing this street dance for several days, and although it looked a little nondescript, they had been watching it for a long time. Or perhaps, when they were occasionally seen by others, they would be praised for their good dancing. However, they were not sure if these people were just praising them, or if they were really good-looking. They did not see how outstanding this street dance was. A group of men, stroking their hair coquettishly. Thinking about it now, he could imagine that after the poetry gathering ended, his father would beat him up, but in terms of military strategy, he was not as good as his father. In terms of governance, he was also not as good as his father. In fact, Li Qingqian felt that he was not as good as his father in all aspects. His father had Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, and Wei Jing by his side. But what about him? At this time, Li Qingqian turned around and glanced at Cheng Chumo, Du Go, and the others. He did not think that this group of people would have the ability of their father's generation. This group of stubborn people, he did not dare to hope that they would become his right-hand men in the future. Although this Du Go still looked a little bit like a human, but who could stand a fly flying around their ears all day long? Thinking of this, Li Qingqian's eyes could not help but flash a hint of hesitation. To jump or not to jump? At the mid-autumn poetry gathering, many nobles would participate. It was inevitable that someone would see through his identity. At that time, his face. Where should he put it? However, this was also the time for him to become famous. After all, this thing came from Zhang Feng. Which one of his things was not shocking? If he became famous at this time, it would be the time for him to accumulate reputation. At that time, his staff would also increase a little. Thinking of this, Li Qingqian could not help but feel conflicted. He said, Fengzi, about this street dance, why don't I not participate? Although the name of this prosperous Tang dynasty is very flashy, I feel that I am not worthy. Zhang Feng glared and said, which bastard said that you are not worthy? No, there will definitely be a lot of people in Chang, and who will know me. At that time, the one who will lose face will be Lao Li's family. When Li Qingqian said this, Cheng Chumo and the others also wanted to throw in the towel. Previously, when Zhang Feng was busy, they also felt that this thing was interesting. In fact, to put it bluntly, they were just playing this game and didn't need to go to class. But when it was time to go on stage, they couldn't help but feel scared. Zhang Feng was also cursing the group of cowards in his heart, but he still patiently introduced the benefits of hip-hop to them. Look, isn't this dance coquettish? You guys were able to become the 4 great devil kings of Chang. That's all because of your abilities, isn't it? When Li Qingqian and the others heard this, their faces instantly darkened. However, Zhang Feng didn't wait for them to speak and continued. This dance is something that I painstakingly studied for a long time before I researched it from the 8th set of radio gymnastics. Moreover, this thing is also a kind of martial arts. It can reflect the masculine beauty of men and show your yearning for beautiful things. Don't you guys want to spread the positive energy of the Tang dynasty to the world? Li Qingqian was stunned by Zhang Feng's words. Seeing that it was effective, Zhang Feng continued, let's talk about other things. Didn't you guys say that there will be a lot of girls at the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet? And those palace officials will all come to participate? How good is this? Not only will it let people remember you, but this kind of novel dance will also let people remember you. Don't you want to inherit the family business now? Don't you want to make a name for yourself in your official career? This is a rare opportunity to show your face. If you don't seize it, then you are really finished. Besides, what's wrong with street dancing? You have to know that this is something that my master understood when he traveled to India and other places. In India and Dashi, everyone can sing and dance well, from the nobles and ministers to the common people. Which one of them can't sing a song at any time and place? Dance a song? Zhang Feng bragged about the benefits and finally made Li Qingqian and the others excited again. At this time, Zhang Feng dropped a heavy bomb and said, when the time comes, I will let Jingshu play a song with me to accompany your street dance. Is that okay? Finally, the few of them agreed in ecstasy. As long as you don't feel ashamed, then Lao Tzu and the others have nothing to be afraid of. At the same time, on the mountain, Yu Shernan and the others didn't rest. They sat in the small bamboo house and waited for something. Not long after, Ma Zhou helplessly knocked on the door of the small bamboo house. Ouyang Sun stood up and opened the door. That kid left? Ma Zhou said helplessly, they have left. However, I do not know how long they have been gone. All the guards did not tell me. If not for the fact that this student knows the habits of our esteemed teacher, this student would not know if our esteemed teacher had left or not. Hearing this, the nervousness on Ouyang Sun's face slowly dissipated. He stroked his beard and said, let's go. It's good that we know that kid left the mountain. Chapter 1177. Trust me this. Are you sure there's no problem? What's the problem? Ouyang Sun paced back and forth in the room with his hands clasped behind his back. Actually, I don't need to say anything. That kid should have already planned to go down the mountain. After all, it's such a big matter. At this time, those people must have their eyes on you. Moreover, if we deliberately let people spread the matter of us quarreling with Zhang Feng tonight, that would be the best. I believe that kid will certainly understand. Xueji waved his hand and said, I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about that street dance. That kind of thing, when I first saw it, I felt it was a little out of place, let alone the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet. Brother Dengshan, you worry too much. Xueji laughed loudly and said, actually, to put it bluntly, this kid is hoping that the more this matter spreads, the safer he will be. In the end, this matter is the fault of those 5 families and 7 clans. Zhang Feng just wants to tell the truth of the matter to the people. People in this era had a great desire for land. In this era of agriculture, land resources were the foundation of people's livelihood. Because of this, Yu Shernan and others were so cautious at this time. Forget it, forget it. We've already said before that we'll leave the external affairs to him. This kid has a lot of tricks up his sleeves, so he shouldn't mess around. Even if he does, he should be fine with those guys protecting him. Hearing this, several people secretly laughed a few times. As Yu Shernan said, they thought too much at this time. They only needed to do the things of the academy well. After all, once the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet ended, it would be the big day of the opening of the academy. This little mistake could not be made. Thinking of the serious matter, several people could not help but return to normal again. Brother Bashi, I think that Ma Zhou, Hao Chujun and the others are talents. These little guys, in just a month, can be familiar with the so-called mathematics of Zhang Feng, and can even recite the Book of Songs and the Analects of Confucius. There are not many such good seedlings. Brother Bashi, don't you want to find a disciple to inherit your mantle in the future? Although Ouyang Sun said this at this time, his heart was already burning. However, Zhang Feng, this kid, acted too quickly and took a few people as disciples. At this time, it was somewhat inappropriate for him to ask for people. Yu Shernan nodded. That's true. That kid is indeed talented in the field of poetry and calligraphy. You guys probably don't know this yet, but that kid usually speaks without thinking. All of the poems he recites have been recorded by that kid called Majo. This old man was thinking about when we should ask him for it and compile it into a book. When the time comes, it can be counted as one of that kid's classics that will be handed down for generations. At this point, Yu Shernan's expression froze. The three of you, at the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet, this kid won't. Should we now organize all the poems that he has made and use them at the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet the day after tomorrow? Poetry Meet. Not only did they have to write a few poems, but they also had to go through poetry evaluation, taste and guess the poems, as well as the acrostic poems and so on. They also had to compete with the young talents present. They had never seen such a thing before. Now that they had competed with others in poetry, they couldn't help but worry. When Ouyang Sun heard this, he couldn't help but frown as he thought. He stared at the boiling teapot and an idea came to him. Do you still remember the sensational effect that kids' poems caused at the foot of the mountain? When he said this, Xue Ji and the others' eyes couldn't help but light up. You mean to say that we should give out his poetry book? Not at all. Wouldn't that be too sloppy? If that was the case, the emperor wouldn't have been so stingy as to only pass out a few poems last time. Old man's meaning is that if we match his poems with corresponding paintings and let people spread them at the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet, wouldn't we be able to use the fame present to let this kid avoid some confrontation in other aspects? This kid has seen for himself that he doesn't know anything about ancient literature. If he meets an opponent and interrogates him about ancient literature, then ancient literature was a general term for some of the rare ancient books that were passed down by the literati before the previous dynasty. Although these things existed in large quantities in the world, they were also scattered everywhere. Basically, not everyone had the opportunity to learn some of these things. For example, the ancient books that Zhang Feng had collected on the mountain. Even they hadn't seen some of them before. They were great scholars. At any time, they hoped that more of their things could be passed down. However, those aristocrats were trying their best to monopolize the industry of learning. They didn't just look down on Zhang Feng. In the eyes of those aristocrats, even they were just mediocre. If they deliberately targeted Zhang Feng at this poetry meet, then this poetry meet wouldn't let Zhang Feng become a great scholar. It would be impossible for him to become famous. However, if they could send out the poems that Zhang Feng had made before, then the significance would be very different. Chapter 1178. Come, raise your legs. Yes, that's it. Straighten your back and lower your knees as much as possible. Yes, one big, two big left leg splits, swing your hands. Yes, swing your clothes, squint your eyes. Continue, do the cross steps. I'm not asking you to draw the snake. You silly boy. Do you know how to do the cross steps or not? Yes, one more time. Turn around. After turning around, the first thing you need to do is kneel down with your right knee pressed against your leg. Then, place your hand on your left knee. In the brewery, Zhang Feng was teaching them over and over again. Outside the door, the old housekeeper of Zhang Shan's mansion, Zhang Fu, found it strange. Such voices had spread throughout the market since early this morning. If they hadn't heard the rumor that Zhang Feng went down the mountain in a fit of pique after fighting with the 4 great Confucian scholars last night, they wouldn't have heard it. Zhang Shan had come personally, but in the end he couldn't wait any longer and left. Only Zhang Fu was left at the door to wait for Zhang Feng and ask Zhang Feng about the specific situation. But it wasn't until evening that Zhang Feng led Cheng Chumo and the others out of the brewery, their bodies drenched in sweat. Zhang Feng's white robe didn't change at all, but Cheng Chumo and the others felt uncomfortable. Since last night, Zhang Feng had made them wear short shirts made of top-grade silk, a mixture of white and black. There was also a row of what Zhang Feng called buttons on the chest. It looked awkward and anxious. When Li Chengqian and the others came out, their servants hurriedly helped them put on their robes. At the beginning, Li Chengqian and the others were indeed a little repulsed and even felt a little ashamed. After all, things like short sleeves were the attire of lower-class people. Now that they were wearing them and were going to participate in the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet, they couldn't help but feel a little unnatural. But under Zhang Feng's insistence, they gritted their teeth and persevered. After all, this thing was also made of top-grade silk. There were still some differences between it and the coarse linen clothes passed down by the common people. They no longer had a way out. Once Zhang Feng lost his position at the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet, they all knew what the outcome would be. To be honest, this dance was indeed nondescript, but once the dance was accepted, then it was really. Of course, all of this started with Zhang Feng. If it weren't for Zhang Feng instilling his values and thoughts on visual enjoyment in everyone from the very beginning, they wouldn't have dared to agree. After all, Zhang Feng treated this matter very seriously. Not only that, at the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet tomorrow night, Zhang Feng would personally attend. This made them feel more at ease. Otherwise, they would always think that this was a plan devised by Zhang Feng to embarrass them. The tavern was a good place. Although the place was somewhat unsightly, the food here was still different from the food on the mountain. After all, to be able to eat the food personally cooked by Feng Zi was also a kind of joy in life. At this time, Zhang Feng and the others also noticed Zhang Fu. Zhang Feng wiped the sweat off his face and let them move freely before welcoming Zhang Fu into the tavern. Once they sat down, Zhang Fu said with a smile, "Prince Zhang, what are you doing in the winery?" Zhang Feng laughed and didn't explain anything. Instead, he asked, "Housekeeper Zhang, you seem to have been waiting for a long time? Did something big happen?" Zhang Fu nodded. "Indeed. Early this morning, Master heard that young Master quarreled with the 4 great scholars on the mountain last night. Is this true?" Zhang Feng thought for a moment and concluded that this was definitely something Yu Shernan and the others had done. He nodded his head. "Yes, last night, there was indeed a quarrel." Hearing this, Zhang Fu's expression couldn't help but change. "Prince Zhang, is it because of the iron mine?" Zhang Feng wasn't in the mood to talk about this with the old housekeeper. He asked, "Housekeeper Zhang, if you have something to say, just say it." Only then did Zhang Fu let out an awkward laugh, realizing his identity. "Master sent many people out because of this matter. But after Master heard about it today, he personally came to find you. But when I saw that the door was closed and there was a strange sound coming from the brewery, I knew that young Master Zhang was preparing for tomorrow's Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet. So, Old Master wants this old man to ask how young Master Zhang's preparations are going? If not, Master has already gone personally." Zhang Feng hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "I have already made plans for this matter. If Master Zhang wants to, don't come in contact with him for the time being. Otherwise, he will be targeted by thieves." Zhang Fu could only sigh at these words. "Fine. Since that's the case, this old man has a letter that Master personally gave me. It's for Duke Chen. Back then, Master met with Duke Chen several times, so he promised Master that he would help him with something. Since that's the case, this old man won't stay any longer. But that Duke Chen seems to be a guest at the 16th King's residence. If young Master has time, go back and take a look. Perhaps you might be able to help." Duke Chen? Ho Junji? What was this old brat doing in Chang, and at this time? Chapter 1179. Zhang Feng thought about it for a moment and finally felt relieved. The other party was a duke. Although Zhang Feng knew that this guy came to instigate the crown prince to seize power but failed in the end, and that he was a bad guy to the bone, but this guy was very scheming. Now that he came to Chang, and his purpose was obvious. It was to participate in the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet. As the name implied, the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet was a gathering of friends through poetry, but it was also a time for all the nobles of the royal palace to recruit retainers. It wasn't strange for him to come at this time. However, Zhang Feng just couldn't figure out why this old man had come at this time. Was it for the crown prince? Or was it for him? But when he thought about how this fellow was so close to his own home, Zhang Feng felt rather uncomfortable. After sending off the old steward, Zhang Feng had a heavy heart and wanted to return to his residence to take a look. After all, Jing Shu was the only woman in his residence. Moreover, those guards were in the residence, and they should already know about what had happened to him. Moreover, this was such a major matter, and his own name was also affected. If that Duke of Chen Ho Junji, Zhang Feng could no longer sit still. He waved his hand and said, "Let's go home." Li Chengqian and the others had been gnawing on a pot of braised lamb leg. When they heard Zhang Feng's words, they were truly rather taken aback. Cheng Chumo still hadn't put down the lamb leg in his mouth, so he asked, "Go back for what?" Zhang Feng's expression was rather grave and irritated. "I'll go back and practice with Jingshu's musical instrument until tomorrow morning." "Prince Zhang." Just as Zhang Feng was speaking, a shout came from the entrance. A shout came from the door. Zhang Feng turned his head and saw that one of the guards had already walked into the small tavern. Matriarch has ordered for you to quickly return home." Matriarch. Naturally, it was Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu. Did something happen at home? Zhang Feng asked with a grimace. The thing he was most worried about seemed to have happened. Li Chengqian and the others abruptly stopped eating and glared at the guard. The guard hurriedly waved his hands and said, "No, no, no, it's outside the Ox courtyard. The Ox clan members are outside. I heard that the young master of the Niu family woke up today and was carried to the manor. He said that he wanted to thank you personally and also said that the family head had left the mountain. I only found out about the family head leaving the mountain after waiting." Hearing this, Zhang Feng finally understood. It had been a few days since Niu Jianhu's leg had been reconnected. At this time, Zhang Feng wanted to see how his leg had recovered. "Let's go home and take a look." When Cheng Chumo and the others heard this, it was as if they had gone to Zhang Feng's residence. How could they be in the mood to eat? They really wanted to be the first to witness such miraculous medical skills. They hurriedly packed up and called for a carriage. Then, they hurriedly returned to Zhang Feng's courtyard. At this moment, Zhang Feng's courtyard felt more like a home. However, Zhang Feng also felt that this courtyard was different from other courtyards in Zhang Feng's courtyard. This place was different in that it was too big, much bigger than other courtyards. Moreover, Zhang Feng also discovered that the location of this courtyard seemed to be at the center of the residence of the 16 Wangs. Not just the other places, even the gate was much larger than the gates of other courtyards. At this time, there were more than a dozen guards guarding it. It looked more like a general's courtyard. The residence of the 16 Wangs was not far from the Eastern Market. At this time, Zhang Feng and the others were in a hurry to return. Therefore, almost as soon as the carriage stopped, Zhang Feng carried the medicine box and hurriedly entered the courtyard. "Master, that Niu Jianhu brought a guest and has been waiting for a long time at the pavilion in the middle of the courtyard." At this time, when an old man saw Zhang Feng appear, he hurriedly went forward. Although the old man looked to be about 60 years old, his face was full of shrewdness, which made him look quite sage-like. Seeing this, Zhang Feng asked, "You are?" The old man hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Master, this humble one's surname is Du, and my courtesy name is Ziting. I am from Liang province. Because of the disaster, my family's business declined. In the end, Master Zhang found me and appointed me as your steward." Hearing this, Zhang Feng finally understood. However, he still felt a little confused. "You said you have a stomachache?" "That's me." Zhang Feng was speechless. "Damn it, I met Jia Daoren some time ago, and now I have a stomachache? Damn it." However, this was not the time to ask about this. Zhang Feng asked, "Where is the pavilion in the middle of the lake? Lead the way." After all, he had not been to this courtyard many times. He only had a rough idea of the location, structure, and so on. Du Ziting was also stunned, but said nothing and led the way. After about a meal's worth of time, they finally arrived at the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Seeing this pace, Zhang Feng suddenly had the illusion that he was looking at the sea. This lake, Zhang Feng dared to bet with 100% certainty that it could hold at least 100 ships. This was called AF** King Lake? It really was a lake. Chapter 1180. In the distance, Zhang Feng saw that there were already many people standing in the pavilion. Niu Jinda, who was wearing a purple robe, seemed to be in a good mood. He no longer looked as dispirited as he did when he learned that his son had broken his leg. He and Yu Qigong were talking to an old man with white eyebrows and a white beard. In the middle of the pavilion, Niu Jianhu was surrounded by a group of maidservants. He was even more comfortable than the emperor. Some were massaging his shoulders, while others were massaging his legs. Jing Shu, on the other hand, was different. She stood at the side and exchanged greetings with others from time to time. Zhang Sun Wuji and the others were also there. However, the pavilion was not big. They just stood casually on the bridge of the pavilion and talked about something. None of them were missing. No, except Li Shimin, all of them were here. After seeing them, Cheng Chumo and the others could not help but feel a little awkward. They shyly followed behind Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng did not think much of it and continued to walk with a majestic gait. Niu Jinda was the first to see them. He hurriedly said a few words to the old man with white eyebrows and a white beard. Then he laughed and threw himself at them with open arms. "Ah, brother Zhang, you're finally here." Seeing this, Zhang Feng's eyelids twitched. He hurriedly dodged Niu Jinda's bear hug. If he hugged him, although his leg would not be broken, he did not want to go through the same thing as last time when Lao Yu choked his neck. After hurriedly dodging Niu Jinda, he said, "Looks like you've been doing well recently. Did you secretly eat Xiaohu's tonic?" You're right. Lao Li gave us a colorful tiger. Most of it went into this old man's stomach. Yu Qigong stepped forward and protected Zhang Feng behind him. Zhang Feng's eyes widened when he heard this. "A tiger? How many days has it been? It's gone? Old Niu, you're not King kind. Don't you know how to get me such a good thing? Even if it's just a bit of tiger bone, it'll be good enough for me to brew some wine." Niu Jinda glared at Zhang Feng. Then, while Zhang Feng wasn't paying attention, he wrapped his arms around Zhang Feng's neck. In an instant, Zhang Feng's face turned pale. The words he wanted to say were all stuck in his throat. Resentment, unwillingness, grievance. Instantly, they all focused on Zhang Feng's face. However, he was still no match for this old man. He could only watch as he was brought to the pavilion in the middle of the lake. On the other hand, Zhang Sun Wuji and the others looked at Zhang Feng and then at the old man, as if introducing Zhang Feng to the old man. The old man was also looking at Zhang Feng with some interest at this moment. He stroked his beard. Zhang Feng finally broke free from Niu Jinda's grip and came to the old man's side. After greeting Zhang Sun, Wei Jing, Fang Xianling and the others, he looked at the old man and asked, "You are?" The old man was wearing a dark purple robe. Although he was a little ordinary, he had a strong aristocratic aura. It made people feel as if they were facing a ferocious tiger. This made Zhang Feng's heart tremble. The old man smiled and sized up Zhang Feng, then said slowly, "My surname is Ho." After thinking for a while, Zhang Feng still asked, "May I ask your name is?" The old man's face instantly became a little unhappy, and his face gradually darkened. It was disrespectful to ask someone's name so bluntly. Niu Jinda, Wei Zheng and the others coughed and tried to stop Zhang Feng. The old man hadn't expected this brat to ask such a question. Logically speaking, he should have said that it was an honor to meet you at last, but why would he ask this question? Ho Junji couldn't help but unhappily say, "Ho Junji." Hearing this, Zhang Feng came to a realization. So it was him. He had felt that this old scoundrel wasn't simple to have this sort of aura. He had already felt that this old man wasn't simple, but now it seemed this wasn't just not simple. He truly had met the person he didn't want to meet the most. But Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel that things weren't as simple as they seemed. This old scoundrel wasn't someone who would visit a temple for no reason. As long as he had his eyes on you, you would definitely wash him clean. Moreover, this scoundrel was relying on his status as the crown prince's father-in-law. Wang Chong didn't dare to guarantee that he would do anything to him. Ho Junji was a fierce general under Li Shimin and Xianxia, and he had contributed greatly in the Xuanwu Gate incident, allowing him to achieve his current accomplishments. This old scoundrel was also a wise man. Once the world was stable, he would immediately retire. This was undoubtedly a smart move. But that was only under the condition that no one knew about him. As for Zhang Feng, he hurriedly bowed and said, "So it was Duke Chen. Please forgive me for not coming out to meet you." Ho Junji playfully looked at Zhang Feng. He indifferently said, "It was nothing much. I just happened to be in Chang and to meet some old friends, and I heard some interesting stories about little brother, so I wanted to come and see little brother's miraculous medical skills. Although Ho Junji wanted to shout that he had heard so much about Wang Chong, he suppressed his urge. At this time, he also wanted to see Zhang Feng's abilities, so he couldn't be bothered to lower himself to this scoundrel's level. If Niu Jianhu's leg had really been connected by him, then he could let it go, but if not, Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel his hair stand on end when he saw Ho Junji's expression. This old scoundrel was definitely up to no good. But he didn't dare to say anything. He could only apologize, open the medicine box, and sit down next to Niu Jianhu. Little brother who, your complexion has been good recently. Chapter 1181. After all, Niu Jianhu was Niu Jinda's only son. He was also the last hope of the entire family and the entire village. At this moment, when Zhang Feng came forward, Niu Jinda waved his hand and chased away the servant girls serving him. He smiled and squatted beside Zhang Feng, looking at him. Don't underestimate this. In ancient times, Lao Tzu and his son were basically friends. As long as his son was alive, he wouldn't dare to let Lao Tzu squat. He would lie down or sit down, otherwise it would be seen as disrespectful. But at this moment, it was precisely because of this. One could also see Niu Jianhu's position in Niu Jinda's heart. I'm fine. When my leg recovers, if you tell me to go east, I definitely won't go west. Niu Jianhu was also excited. At this moment, he pulled Zhang Feng's hand, causing Zhang Feng to feel pain. Zhang Feng sucked in a breath of cold air. He was seriously regretting it. Why didn't he break his hand this time? Wasn't this too strong? Lao Tzu was like this, and even more so for his son. Brother Xiaohu, let's not talk about these useless things. Let's take a look at your leg first, okay? Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted and pulled his hand back. However, Niu Jinda laughed and said, Feng Zi, there's no hurry. Xiaohu has been holding back for a few days and insisted on thanking you personally. If not for the fact that you left the mountain today and the stitches had to be removed today according to your rules, I wouldn't have brought this brat out to embarrass myself. Tell me that net wall is so simple. I've seen it with my own eyes. So many brats didn't make any mistakes. Why did it have to be him? This clearly doesn't matter. He deserves it. As he spoke, Niu Jinda pointed at Gao Can and said, But Feng Zi, this student of yours is a good seedling. Why don't you let me train him? In less than a year, I'll give you a soldier seedling. When Zhang Feng heard this, he looked at Gao Can, whose eyes were burning with passion. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, I'll train my own student. If I let you train him, who knows what method you'll use. Besides, do you have such an advanced training method like mine? Zhang Feng was familiar with the art of war at this time. It was simple and crude. If they didn't die, they could become gods. This was also a rule that had always existed in the army. All the soldiers were filled with hostility. Where did this come from? He had been tortured miserably. However, to Zhang Feng, who had participated in countless military training in the 21st century and had watched countless movies and novels about the special forces, this was simply bullshit. Hostility was contagious, and it spread from one person to another. This was also the reason why these people were so brave. Who didn't have a stomach full of anger when they were trying to kill someone in the training ground? On the battlefield, this vicious aura was the driving force that kept them alive. It was also the thing that supported them to kill the enemy bravely. Moreover, this thing was passed down from generation to generation. There were even some people whose minds were distorted because of this. That was why there were so many rebellions in history. Zhang Feng was not willing to bear such infamy. If his students were to be like this in the future, then he would just kill them with a single slash. He didn't want to be implicated in the future. With this thought, Zhang Feng chuckled and interrupted, Hee, old bull, it seems like you have too much energy. Why don't you come with us to remove your son's stitches? When it comes to military matters, the two of us are both idiots. We still have to listen to Duke Chen. At the same time, he also flattered Duke Chen, Ho Junji. It wasn't that he wanted to flatter him. It was that he had no choice but to divert the trouble. He had just offended Ho Junji, and if he didn't quickly shut him up, he would be in for a lot of trouble. If he was targeted, he would be dead meat. This singer was the type of person who would definitely die if she missed someone. However, this also aroused Zhang Feng's interest. When no one was paying attention, Zhang Feng hurriedly asked, "Old bull, let me ask you something. How did you get to know Duke Chen?" At this time, Zhang Feng was staring at Qing Yaojin, Fang Xianling, and the others, who were happily chatting with Duke Chen. He was full of question marks. Logically speaking, these were two completely unrelated people. How did they get to know each other? Niu Jinda didn't know why Zhang Feng would ask this. Thinking that he had discovered something, he hurriedly explained, "Hey, I thought it was something big. Old brother, didn't we join the army before? Do you know who our immediate superior is?" Zhang Feng was shocked. "It can't be him, right?" "That's right." Seeing that he had fooled around, Niu Jinda said, "Back then, when Duke Chen learned of what happened on Mount Qilian, he and General Li Xiaogong brought old Yu and the others up the mountain to risk their lives to rescue them. Yes, it was Cheng Guigong and Li Xiaogong. General Li was touched by us and became close friends. It was also because of this that we were allowed to leave the military. Although we left, we were still considered as non-staff members in the military. Our duty was to prepare supplies for the military. In the past few years, although we are living a comfortable life now, we have been thinking about returning to the military all the time. This is also why we were so excited when we learned that you understood military science and wanted to train Tai Nyo and the other boys. After all, you've seen this group of boys. They've never suffered as children and have been spoiled since they were young. They're not suited for the army. We were also worried that they would lose face for us. It's fine for us, but we were worried that we would lose face for General Li and Duke Chen." Chapter 1182. Zhang Feng really didn't know what was going on. Hearing old Nio's words, Yu Qigong and the others also sighed and chimed in. Zhang Feng couldn't help but be dumbfounded. As for Li Chengqian and the others who were standing in the distance, they stared dumbfoundedly at the magnificent scene of these old fellows taking turns to talk Zhang Feng until he almost cried. They almost couldn't hold back and wanted to say a few words. But in the end, they were still sent flying by Qing Yaojin with a kick. They were afraid that these young fellows would expose their good deed. That wouldn't be fun. Niu Jianhu was still anxiously waiting for Zhang Feng, who was holding his leg and holding the knife in his hand, to stab his leg. He was already prepared to faint from the pain. But after waiting for a full 2 hours, in this kind of nervous state, he suffered for 2 hours. But in these 2 hours, these old fellows seemed to be high from bragging. How could they still care about him? Niu Jianhu simply closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. F***CKU. If you want to stab me, then so be it. Can't you let me have a good time? What kind of time is it now? Are you still bragging? If you annoy Lao Tzu, do you believe that I won't expose your identities? But obviously, Niu Jinda and the others had already treated him as heir. As for Jingshu, at this time, she couldn't listen anymore. Her man was fooled by a group of people. Other than sighing, what else could she do? These people's identities were better than the other. What could she, a little girl, say? So, she quietly found an excuse to leave. Out of sight, out of mind. Everyone was talking excitedly. Zhang Feng actually waved his hand and placed a few tables of delicious food on the waterside pavilion outside the pavilion. They continued to eat and drink. Another 2 hours passed until Li Shimin came. Only then did everyone remember the proper business. Li Shimin was after all a meticulous person. He glanced at Niu Jianhu, who was sleeping soundly, and knew what was going on. Li Chengqian and the others could no longer hide and hurriedly went forward to pay their respects. Behind Li Shimin was a group of old men who looked up to the sky. This caused Zhang Feng to sniff. There was always a strong smell of medicine on this group of people. It was obvious that they had been infected with Chinese medicine for a long time, which was why there was such a smell. Zhang Feng hurriedly asked, "Lao Li, these people are..." Li Shimin looked behind him with a smile and said, "These people are not simple. After the emperor heard about your legendary medical skills, he wanted to let the people of the Imperial Institute of Medicine come to see you and teach them a lesson. Look at this group of old things. They think they have some skills, so they are arrogant. This is not good." Zhang Feng suddenly understood. How could anyone who could enter the imperial hospital be a simple person? However, having stood at the peak for so many years, they were naturally unwilling to lower their heads to look at those ants and see if they had already surpassed them. Zhang Feng did not dare to offend them, so he hurriedly clasped his fist and bowed. "Everyone, this one has not received you well. I was chatting with my old friends and forgot. This one will prepare a banquet in a little while to personally apologize. How about it?" "Ah, Prince Zhang, what are you saying? You all have all taken good care of us, and with Duke Chen and Second Master Li here, we would not dare." Imperial physician Zhou had originally thought nothing of this matter. This morning, he had been summoned by little Gizi to accompany the emperor to his private estate. They had long known that the retired emperor had given the manor to a young brat. In addition, this young brat was the one who had saved the ox-seeing tiger's leg. Moreover, he was the one who had made the retired emperor lose face in the imperial court. How could he have a good expression? But when he saw Wei Jing, Hou Junji, and the others, he was afraid. In front of these people that even he had to bow and scrape, this brat dared to put on an act? After exchanging some pleasantries, a series of discordant snoring sounds caused black lines to appear on everyone's forehead. Li Shimin pointed at Niu Jianhu and asked, "What's going on here? How did they end up sleeping?" Wei Zheng and the others were at a loss for words. They hurriedly turned to Zhang Feng. "Fengzi, weren't you going to examine little tiger's wound? How did this?" Zhang Feng wanted to curse. He glared at Niu Jinda and said, "Damn it, if you hadn't interrupted me, Niu Jianhu's stitches would have been removed." Niu Jinda opened his mouth, pointed at himself, and awkwardly smiled. "I forgot." "Amazing!" Zhang Feng gave him a thumbs up. "You even forgot to examine the wound of your son, your only son. Just how much yellow soup have you poured into your brain? Let's not talk about it anymore. Let's take a look at little tiger's leg first." Zhang Feng couldn't say anything. After all, this was a serious matter. Li Shimin kicked away Yuqi Gong, Qing Yaojin, and Niu Jinda. Then he sat beside Zhang Feng with his hands clasped behind his back, carefully observing Zhang Feng applying alcohol bit by bit onto Niu Jinhu's leg that was wrapped in bamboo pieces. At this moment, the imperial physicians also widened their eyes, watching Zhang Feng's actions. The remaining people also stood on their tiptoes, sticking their heads out to watch Zhang Feng's every move. When the last piece of bamboo was removed, everyone saw Niu Jianhu's swollen leg, as well as a wound that stretched from his knee to his ankle. At this moment, the wound had already formed a scab, but the centipede-like stitches still made everyone's teeth ache. After Zhang Feng examined it, he glanced at the people from the imperial physician court and said, "Brother Little Tiger, wake up, I'm going to use the knife." Chapter 1183. Niu Jianhu was having a sweet dream at this time. He seemed to be dreaming of a girl. How could he know that Zhang Feng was doing something on his leg? If it weren't for Li Shimin's presence, Niu Jinda would have slapped this bastard unconscious in the morning. How could he still have the mood to sleep at this time? But now this guy was sleeping soundly. In addition, the emperor and others were gathered together, so he couldn't say anything. He could only stare anxiously at Niu Jianhu. And Zhang Feng was not careless. It seemed that no one had witnessed the whole process of him showing off, so he soaked the special scalpel in alcohol and carefully cut Niu Jianhu's leg with the scalpel. Ouch! F***ck, who is it? Who the F***ck is touching me? Niu Jianhu finally woke up in a sharp pain, but he didn't dare to move his right leg at this time. After all, there was still a scalpel in it. Under the instinctive reaction just now, the scalpel, which was just looking for thread in the wound, was inserted into the flesh again because of his movement. It was so painful that his legs trembled. Niu Jianhu was stunned. Weren't they just chatting? Why did they suddenly want to cut him? When he opened his eyes, he thought it was Zhang Feng and Cheng Chumo who were playing tricks. But when he saw Li Shimin's face, the anger in Niu Jianhu's heart was instantly extinguished. Niu Jianhu couldn't help but be moved at this time. Did the emperor want to let Fengzi cut his leg and then watch the process of bone setting again? Otherwise, what were those King imperial doctors doing here? Niu Jianhu was terrified. He didn't dare to experience this pain again. If this were to happen again, it would be a huge joke. At this time, Li Shimin, Imperial Dr. Zhou, and the others automatically filtered out Niu Jianhu's scream. After all, in their eyes, this was a normal thing. His leg was broken. At this time, what else did he want? Even Niu Jinda was staring at Niu Jianhu's leg at this time. He wanted to see if Zhang Feng was going to pull out the bone. He was also very curious whether the bone was really set. But this time, Zhang Feng was a little scared. He stared at Niu Jianhu and said, "Why are you shouting? This is great. The wound that was not easy to heal is now opened again. Why don't you lie down? Come, give him a bowl of anesthetic soup and a bowl of sleeping powder. It's best to let him sleep." Why so troublesome? Imperial Dr. Zhou also became interested at this time. Seeing that Zhang Feng was going to give him anesthetic soup, he took out a delicate acupuncture cloth bag from his arms. Without waiting for Niu Jianhu to beg for mercy, he instantly pierced it into Niu Jianhu's temple. The next moment, Niu Jianhu fell asleep. After exclaiming the magic of acupuncture, Zhang Feng hurriedly and carefully cut open Niu Jianhu's skin with a small pair of scissors soaked in alcohol. After dealing with the broken hair used to suture the wound, he pulled out the thread used to suture the wound bit by bit. Li Shimin was excited. "Fengzi, after doing this, Xiaohu's leg is healed?" Zhang Feng nodded. After thinking for a while, he turned over the wound that had just been poked with a small pair of scissors and said, "Judging from the wound, Xiaohu's leg is well healed. That is to say, Xiaohu's leg can walk in half a month. If possible, he will be able to jump around before the end of this year." He didn't know what kind of tonic old Niu gave Niu Xiaohu, or the ancient people's resistance was so good. In such a short time, Niu Xiaohu's leg injury had already healed by more than half. Li Shimin heard this and looked at Imperial Dr. Zhou again. Imperial Dr. Zhou heard this and wanted to open Li Shimin and pick up the knife to see whether Niu Jianhu's bones had healed or not. That is to say, whether the broken leg had healed or not. But he didn't dare. At this time, seeing Li Shimin glance at him, his heart trembled and he hurriedly said, "Second Master, looking at the condition of the leg injury, Brother Xiaohu's leg should be fine. It's really worth celebrating." Yes. "Second Master, Master Niu, don't worry. I will personally check Xiaohu's pulse and give him acupuncture later. Then, I will prescribe a better tonic. In less than 3 months, Brother Niu should be able to walk." Li Shimin, Niu Jinda, and the others didn't believe this group of imperial doctors. In the end, they looked at Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng washed his hands and handed the tools and medicine box to the servant, then said, "You should know how to use this bamboo clip. Now, I have wrapped the gauze on Xiaohu's leg injury. I will have to trouble the imperial doctors to help me wrap it up. Wait for this Zhang to prepare food and wine. I hope everyone—" Hey, Fengzi, what are you talking to this group of old bastards for? Let's go in and talk." Li Shimin hurriedly stopped Zhang Feng. He grabbed Zhang Feng's neck and dragged him out. Imperial Dr. Zhou and the others curled their lips. But the emperor had already said, what can they do? Now that the brat was gone, they could check on Niu Jinda's noble son to see if his leg bone had been reconnected or not. Zhang Feng didn't care about what this group of imperial doctors could find out. The key was that he was afraid that this group of people would apply that kind of medicine on Niu Xiaohu's leg. Then he would die. What kind of medicine is that? That was actually slaked lime. That sour feeling. Chapter 1184. The moment they entered, Li Shimin and the others held their breaths and sat down. The banquet had officially begun. However, under the repeated insistence and encouragement of the crowd, Jing Shu was called up and prepared to play a song. However, she was strongly dissuaded by Zhang Feng. What a joke! This is my, Zhang Feng's, woman. You want to listen? Not a chance. This shout put Li Shimin on the spot. Fengzi, you're simply forgetting your friends for your lover. That's right. You're unreasonable. We're all brothers, but you're not even willing to share? Scram. Brothers are brothers, but you can't mess around with your wife. Zhang Feng anxiously retorted. But when he said that, everyone couldn't help but laugh playfully. Yu Qigong heartily laughed. Fengzi, I told you that you couldn't bear to part with your wife. Since you've said this, why don't you find some time to marry Jingshu and little sister Yuyao? That'll be perfectly justifiable. Although this was the case, Zhang Feng truly hadn't thought through the question of marrying right now. After all, while marrying was good, he was still unwilling. Marrying at this crucial moment was a little too hasty. After all, the 5 surnames and 7 hopes had already made their move, and these people were far more terrifying than the Turks. If these people were serious, the consequences would truly be troublesome. Moreover, Zhang Feng was well aware of the intentions of his old brothers today. But, everyone, let's talk about something else. Li Shimin beamed at Zhang Feng and said to Hou Junji, Elder Hou, this kid has made quite a few achievements on the mountain. You should have heard of them. Hou Junji nodded. I've heard of it, but it's just hearsay. However, today, Prince Xiang's medical skills are indeed unimaginable. However, Old Man also heard that the basketball, football, braised meat, white paper, and radio gymnastics that were popular in Chang and city were all created by Prince Zhang. Even though Hou Junji had been in Luozhou this entire time, he still knew about these things. However, these were just rumors. He didn't know if it was Zhang Feng who did it. But if it wasn't Zhang Feng who did it, then who did it? That was why he came to Zhang Feng's residence today. On the one hand, it was because this guy had some tricks up his sleeves. Most importantly, he wanted to see what kind of person Zhang Feng was. Not only was the academy unconventional, but he was also able to come up with something like this. Zhang Feng could naturally tell that Hou Junji was probing him. Seeing this, he cupped his fist and said, These are all minor tricks that Duke of Qin doesn't need to worry about. He didn't dare to be careless. Li Shimin and the others also didn't know what Hou Junji was up to, but they all knew about these things, so they didn't care. Zhang Feng saw that the few of them did not say anything, so he could only wait patiently. As expected, after waiting for a little while, Hou Junji asked, Kid, if these are all minor tricks, then there's no one in the entire Tang dynasty who can compare to you. Hou Junji looked at Zhang Feng with a playful look in his eyes. This brat's words were simply watertight. He didn't know why Zhang Feng was so wary of him, but this was probably one of the things that had attracted Hou Junji's attention. Seeing this, Li Chengqian hurriedly changed the topic. It was all thanks to Duke of Chen's 10,000 dan of grain that we were forced to abandon the mountain. Otherwise, there really would have been a major disaster. It was precisely because of these 10,000 dan of grain that Chang and was able to avoid the food crisis. Compared to what we did, it truly was a minor trick. For the suffering common people of Chang and the several thousand students of my Shao Mountain, this student, Li Chengqian, would like to propose a toast to Duke of Chen. Right. This kid was too rude. If not for Duke of Chen's 10,000 dan of life-saving grain, how could this kid's academy have its current glory? Only then did Zhang Feng react. He raised his wine cup with a smile and said, I am Zhang Feng. Thank you, Duke Chen. Hou Junji sighed, but he still raised his cup and drank with Zhang Feng. Only then did he ask, Old man, I heard that you are preparing to participate in the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet tomorrow? Yes, tomorrow. This kid truly is going to participate in the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet. Zhang Feng nodded. Is Duke of Qin also going tomorrow? Everyone knew what the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet was for. At this moment, Li Shimin and the others couldn't help but glance at Hou Junji. Although the smile on Hou Junji's face remained unchanged, he was inwardly getting a little angry. Was this brat trying to test him instead? This really was. He didn't know what he was doing. Zhang Feng's smile was very thick at this moment. He didn't like the existence of uncertain factors, and he also didn't like being led around by others. He wasn't used to this either. But at this moment, that damned Hou Junji did the exact opposite. Beaming at Li Chengqian, he asked, Young Master Li, old man, I heard that you've been preparing something? Is it to be displayed at tomorrow's Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet? This, Li Chengqian was rather troubled. On one side was his father-in-law. On the other side was his good brother. He instantly felt a little numb. Just a moment ago, the two of them had been exchanging blows. Why did they suddenly turn around and point their spears at him? Wasn't this too exciting? Chapter 1185. Duke Chen has already asked, so there's no harm in speaking. Li Shimin also didn't know what these brats had learned in this period of time. Every time he asked, all of them would stammer, and there were many times when they would hide and not let anyone see what they were up to. At this moment, Li Shimin suspiciously looked at Li Chengqian and asked, "Qian, you haven't been fooling around recently, right?" Replying to father, "We've been studying recently." Li Shimin frowned and asked, "What are you studying that you need to hide?" Junior High Second Grade Physics. Li Shimin, Hou Junji, Wei Zheng and the others. In truth, Li Shimin and the others all knew about this. After all, the things on the mountain were generally kept to the outside world, so if anyone wanted to ask about it, they would know exactly what had appeared on the mountain recently. These strange things had appeared many times, so Li Shimin and the others naturally didn't take them to heart. However, Li Shimin was very concerned about what skills these young men had learned. After all, his confidants and ministers were all gathered together at this time. It would be best if they could show off at this time. After all, this was the time to gain face. But now that he heard Li Chengqian's words, Li Shimin's expression darkened. "Why did I hear that you hid with Tainyo and the others in the brewery for an entire day, and you occasionally heard some strange sounds?" Li Chengqian knew that Lao Tzu would ask this. Li Chengqian couldn't help but scowl as he said, replying to father, "Your child and the others are preparing for tomorrow's mid-autumn poetry meet." "What things?" "We're preparing for the dance. Pif." In truth, Li Chengqian didn't want to say it. It would have been fine if he didn't say it, but if he did, he would definitely be beaten tonight. But it was impossible for him to not say it. In a situation like this, if he said something, it wouldn't matter. He could just fool around. But where am I right now? This was a gathering of big shots, and Imperial Father was about to show off. How could he dare to be perfunctory? At this time, Li Shimin was also very uncomfortable. He glared at Zhang Feng with an extremely ugly expression. "Fengzi, I asked you to take care of my sons. Why didn't you? Why didn't you? They used to be stubborn children who did whatever they wanted in Chang and city all day long. But today, why did you also learn bad things from them?" Li Shimin didn't care about Li Chengqian. At worst, he would just go into seclusion for a year and make up for everything. However, if a good person was led astray, it would be tantamount to destroying the whole person. At this time, Wei Zheng and the others were also a little moved, and they all scolded Cheng Chumo and the others at the same time. Cheng Chumo and the others were furious. He couldn't wait to skin Zhang Feng alive. "I've long said that this thing isn't reliable, but it seems like it's true now. I'll definitely be beaten when I go back." Although no one said anything bad about Zhang Feng couldn't sit still anymore. He was flustered. Although these old brothers were talking about Cheng Chumo and the others, what was this? This was about face. They were indirectly saying that he didn't educate these people well. It would be strange if he could sit still. Hey, what do you all mean?" Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted everyone and said, "You all only know how to talk about them? Do you know how hard they worked for this poetry competition? Why are you all blaming others?" Li Shimin was speechless. Is dancing something a man can do? This, Hou Junji was also a little unhappy at this time, and his face was ashen. However, because Li Shimin was here, he tried his best to restrain himself. He didn't allow himself to act out. After all, the crown prince was going to be the emperor in the future. Although there was no harm in learning some music, it was Zhang Feng's fault to cause such a ruckus. Moreover, he was preparing to act coquettishly in front of the crowd at the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Competition tomorrow. Cough, Zhang Feng, although learning some music can improve one's mood, isn't it a little inappropriate to act coquettishly in front of the crowd? Inappropriate? Inappropriate, your great uncle. You're just a **tea stirrer, touching the pot that doesn't boil. Ha, you're right, Duke-chin. However, although the way of music can only be regarded as an unorthodox study, I wonder if you've heard of high mountain and flowing water? High mountains and flowing rivers? Li Shimin and Hou Junji couldn't help but ask in unison. I've heard of this. Who doesn't know the story of Boy Ezeki? But if you put it here, isn't it a little inappropriate? Inappropriate? Zhang Feng chuckled. Might I ask Lord Duke-chin, what's inappropriate about this? Since Duke-chin has heard of the story of Boy Ezeki and the high mountains and flowing rivers, I presume that Duke-chin has also heard of music. This thing has been passed down since the Warring States period. I presume that it isn't something that any unorthodox study can compare to, right? Then, why does Duke Chen think that this is an unorthodox study? Hou Junji almost vomited blood at Zhang Feng's question. What sort of grudge did the old man have with you that you have to press so hard? Hou Junji couldn't help but angrily say, do you know that old man has heard that there have been many voices in the imperial court accusing your White Deer College of neglecting its proper duties? His Majesty has invested a great deal of capital in the construction of the academy, and he has even placed great hopes on it. But look at what you've done. What's wrong with my academy? Zhang Feng pressed on. Li Shimin saw this and wanted to say something. But after some thought, he glanced at Zhang Sun Wuji. Zhang Sun Wuji originally didn't want to be the mediator, but now that the emperor had signaled him with his eyes, he would be insensible if he didn't say anything. Cough, Feng Zi, Duke Chen is only expressing his own views on this matter. We came today to see just what you've prepared. Duke Chen also came to see what you've prepared. Duke Chen also came to help you check things out so that tomorrow, we can start the operation ahead of time. That's right, Feng Zi, why are you so explosive today? Feng Zi, this is your fault. You're not an impulsive person, so why are you so impulsive today? We're all doing this for your own good. Cheng Yaojin, Wei Zheng, and the others hurriedly tried to persuade him. Only then did Zhang Feng's anger subside. But Zhang Feng wasn't angry. He was doing this on purpose. He wanted to see just how deep Hou Junji was. But now, it seemed that this Hou Junji, it was time to move a little further away. This old scoundrel was even more venomous than a viper. Seeing that he had a way out, Zhang Feng harumphed and said, since that's the case, then this little one has wrongly accused Duke Chen. I hope that Duke Chen can forgive me. The second reason we came back today was also for this dance. Since that's the case, we might as well do it all at once. Didn't all of you want to hear my wife, Jingshu, sing a song? Then you're in for a treat today. In a little while, Jingshu and I will perform a song for the army. What was this? Perform a song? You even know how to do this? Everyone couldn't help but be dumbfounded. Since when did Zhang Feng, this brat, dabble in this Dao? Chapter 1186. While they were talking, amidst the confusion of the crowd, Zhang Feng hurriedly drove Li Qingqian and the others out of the living room. Then he mysteriously went off to do something with the others. Li Shimin and the others were stunned. At this time, those who should leave had all left, leaving behind a group of court tycoons. At this time, everyone couldn't help but look at Li Shimin. Although they wanted to go out and see what this group of brats was doing, at this time, the emperor didn't say anything, so they didn't dare to go out and see. Li Shimin also wanted to go and see. Let's wait for a while. You should all know that Feng Zi cracked Jingshu's Huga 18 beats last time. I was careless. If this brat doesn't know anything about music, how could he have gotten Jingshu back then? Alas. Everyone sighed softly when they heard this. It was the first time that Zhang Feng came to Jingshu's room. At this time, Zhang Feng was sitting in the living room of Jingshu's room with a gloomy face, looking at Jingshu's room. Jingshu was also sitting beside Zhang Feng with her head lowered, blushing slightly. She kept silent. In fact, Jingshu's heart had been beating fast at this time. Steamed Bun had just told her that she was eavesdropping. She probably knew who was sitting in the living room best in the whole bee garden. But only she knew these things, and she didn't dare to say it out. At this time, Zhang Feng should have come for the music. Let her play the music. Zhang Feng was not in a hurry at this time, and no one could see the anger he had when he just came in. Instead, he looked at Jingshu's room with great interest. The room was decorated very elegantly, and it looked like a noble woman. On the four walls, there were all kinds of ancient paintings and ancient characters. On the wall directly opposite Jingshu's living room, there was a woman who Zhang Feng did not recognize. She was holding an umbrella, wearing a fur coat, and carrying a zither on her back. The woman was a natural beauty, but Zhang Feng still didn't know who she was. On the bookshelf next to the picture scroll, there was a dense collection of music scores and other things. Although Zhang Feng did not understand these things, he knew that these things should be priceless. Most of these ancient scrolls are things from Swallow Descent Brothel when we moved last time. They were sent back by our sisters and the procuress. Some of the flowers were gifted by some people. Oh right, when you weren't around last time, the retired emperor and the empress personally came to visit. Most of these were brought by the two of them from the palace. They said that they wanted you to cultivate your sentiments when you have nothing to do, and learn more about palace etiquette. As she spoke, Jingshu glanced at Zhang Feng, and a strange look flashed across her eyes. When Zhang Feng heard this, he did not take it seriously. At this moment, when Jingshu said this, Zhang Feng's interest waned. What does the retired emperor look like? Tell me, and that Empress Zhang-sun, I heard that she is a natural beauty. Isn't she devastatingly beautiful? Without waiting for Zhang Feng to finish speaking, Jingshu covered Zhang Feng's mouth with a pale face. Prince Zhang, don't talk about this anymore. This is talking nonsense about the retired emperor and coveting Empress Feng Yi. This is punishable by death. There was such a damn rule? Zhang Feng was also dumbfounded. He hurriedly comforted her. Oh, let's not talk about it, let's not talk about it. As he spoke, Zhang Feng also took the opportunity to hug Jingshu's slim waist. The air couldn't help but become a little more beautiful. Zhang Feng's breathing also became a little rapid. After the first experience last time, Zhang Feng was looking forward to this kind of thing between a man and a woman. Moreover, at this time, Jingshu was already his woman. Although they had not done the deed of husband and wife, and had not gone through the wedding ceremony, the whole Chang and city now knew that they were in a relationship. They lived together, so who would believe that nothing had happened? Moreover, Jingshu was exactly the same as the campus belle Zhang Feng had a crush on in the University of the Future. How could he control himself at this time? His breathing slowly became rapid. Jingshu was the same. Although she also wanted to, when she thought of what kind of people were sitting in her living room, she couldn't help but be shocked. She forced herself to push Zhang Feng away. Prince Zhang, why are you calling me? My husband. Don't. There are guests at home at this time. After hearing Jingshu's words, Zhang Feng was also enlightened. A basin of cold water was poured down on his head, suppressing the fire in his heart. With this pressure, the two of them instantly felt awkward. That's right, I came to look for you this time because I want you to play a song with me. Wait, it's in the living room, and tomorrow at the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet, the two of us should also play a song. Jingshu's cheeks were burning at this time. She whispered softly, Jing, my husband, can you let go of me? Zhang Feng was stunned when he heard that. Only then did he realize that he was still holding Jingshu tightly. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He missed you, who was far away in Jiangnan. Alas. After a long sigh, Zhang Feng said, I'll write a song now. Later we'll practice here. Then we'll go to the living room and play together with Li Gan and the others. How about that? Okay, it's all up to you, my husband.